Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto saves Rias from Rias or Sasuke bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Millwood and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Within the Pure Land, an old man with unusual features that included deathly pale skin, short-cropped white hair sitting atop his head, a beard that was just about as long as he was tall, eyes that were a deep purple while also lacking sclera, and two horns atop his head looked over what he just finished recording and had used his Banbutsu Sozo no Jutsu to create. A book. The brown cover had the swirl crest of the Uzumaki clan overlapping with a crimson-colored symbol that consisted of a rose encased in a pair of concentric circles. The title was written in beautiful gold leafing, and framed in the lines that were used on a piece of sheet music with each corner ending in blooming flowers that held white petals and pink cores. Nodding to himself, the man smiled as he suddenly detected a sensation behind him that was seemingly paradox in nature. It gave off a presence that felt like it were both something and nothing at all at the same time, as if whatever caused it was nothing more than a living hole in the fabric of the world. Ah, Ofa-san. You made it, Sage, she greeted in return, though it came off as stoic. Why did you request an audience with me? Merely to extend an invitation to see if you would enjoy this, the horned man said, presenting the book. I was asked to compose this by someone that could pass as a dragon in human skin as much as you are. Gale Symphony? The girl read, raising a brow. The sage shrugged. Multiverse counterpart of my son Azura's latest incarnation. For now, I need to make a request as to whom is brought together to read it. Ophis blinked. Azura's latest reincarnation? This would at least be worth looking into then. The sage's second son had always interested her, and she had made attempts to get his aid against Great Red. He had pointed out that while he would have gladly helped her regain her home, his obligation to defend those who could not protect themselves from his brother Indra meant he was forced to decline. Ophis had understood that, and had let the issue be. She had since developed seeing what each of Azura's incarnations were like as a type of hobby, and as an extra-dimensional being and aware of the infinite possibilities of the multiverse. Her lips twitched in a near non-existent smirk. I'm listening, Hagoromo. Rias stared confused. She'd arrived after getting a summons from her older brother, Surzex Lucifer, along with Ajuka Beelzebub, Falbium Asmodeus and Seraphol Leviathan, with instructions for her to bring her entire peerage for a meeting. Seeing as it was from all four of the current Satans, she'd done as requested and gathered her peerage Asia Argento, Yudo Kiba, Issei Haidu, Kaneko Tuju, Gaspar Vladi, Rosweiss, Akino Himejima, and Zenovia Korda and arrived at the designated meeting area. What she hadn't expected was that the Governor-General of the Fallen Angels and Grigori, Azazel, nor Michael, Gabriel, and Irina Shidu of the Angels to be there. What's going on here? Surzex said as the quartet which lead the underworld arrived in their respective teleportation magic circles. Nisama, what's going on? I got a message about you wanting to see me and my peerage. Rias said. Same here. Azazel said. So did my sister and I. We were requested to bring Irina as well. Michael said. Well, we four were informed similarly. Ajuka voiced. Message about a summons? I never sent, Surzex said, then his eyes widened. It's a trap. No sooner had he said that than a glowing, light purple array formed under them all. One of an Ouroboros, an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon eating its own tail. Within the Ouroboros was the image of two entwined serpents eating the tails of one another, thereby forming the symbol for infinity. The array grew brighter and flashed as it caused the group to all cover their eyes. When the light died down and they could all see again, the collective supernatural beings both born and reincarnated all gaped at where they found themselves. It was some kind of ruined cathedral. The benches and chairs were destroyed, overturned, or rotting. Everything was covered in thick layers of dust, broken and rusted weapons and old bloodstains littered the ground, showing that there was a great battle that took place, or perhaps a massacre. The windows, once pristine stained glass, were broken beyond recognition. Whatever images they had displayed were no longer visible, and sunlight broke through their shattered frames from the wall. Pieces of them were scattered around the cathedral from the walls, ceiling, and supportive pillars. And finally, 6 destroyed stone statues were seen, broken and damaged beyond repair. The destruction taken upon them was far more severe than the rest of the cathedral, as if the culprits wished to shatter and erase their very faces from the pages of history. Asia, Zenovia, Irina, Gabriel, and Michael all looked horrified at the state of the undoubtedly once beautiful temple. Who could have done this? And why? Asia asked. When one faith seeks to replace another, this is the result. I never could support stuff like this, even before my wings were black. It put me out of favor with some in heaven for it. Makes me glad I fell. Azazel said tightly, his fist clenching. Obviously this brought up bad memories for the fallen angel. Odd thing to say considering fallen angels go out of their way to destroy all of the religious icons and churches they occupy, and use as bases out of spite for their former leader. Michael pointed out. It didn't matter that we fallen were forced back. Heaven deemed us traitors and we were cast out for the situation and circumstances being against us so that we had to retreat. And for that we were stripped of their right to have a home to return to. And while devils still saw us as angelic, you pure angels saw us as demonic. So we fallen had both sides hounding us. The only way to even temporarily set aside our pain was to give into vice, which blacked their wings just because we actually survived that damned war rather than getting turned into another mountain of corpses, Azazel said with a sharp from aimed at the gold-feathered siblings. Going through that can leave a profound bitterness towards the ones that had forsaken you. Both Michael and Gabriel winced, looking horrified. Too cruel a point, but too true to deny. Okay, so why were we brought here? Yes, he asked, looking around. Kaneko suddenly gasped, falling to all fours and her body started shaking. Kaneko! What's wrong? Rias cried as everyone ran over to her to see if she was all right. SS so much si cha-cha-cha chakra. I never. She faltered as she seemed to start hyperventilating, her gaze fixed on the ceiling all of a sudden, prompting the others to do the same. When they did, an odd, blocky black portal suddenly appeared near the ceiling above them and everyone else, tensed as a sudden feeling of immense energy output was felt. There was an odd ripping noise before a body was ejected and fell to one of the benches below, crushing it inward as the aged decayed, and neglected wood gave out under the sudden impact. Alwa! The person groaned, then pushed their way out of the splintered remains their impact had created, and stood, exposing a male around the same age as this in Rias's peerage. He was tall with nicely tanned skin, marks on his cheeks that resembled 3 whisker marks on each cheek, and bright yellow hair that was spiky and stuck up in all directions like the spines of a sea urchin. He had on a slim, form-fitting orange tracksuit outfit with black on the upper shoulders area and the color extending from around the neck and shoulders, down the front and sleeves, as well as around the waist, a white swirl on the left side, a red swirl crest on the back, orange pants, but his sandals that covered the instep and ankles, yet left his toes and heels exposed, and the pouches at his waist and thigh were black. So was the headband he had on around his forehead with a metal plate and swirled arrow symbol of some sort. He brushed himself off. Good thing I didn't land on the arm, he muttered. His comment drew attention to the fact that his right arm was wrapped in white medical gauze, yet what was odd was his limbs seemed functional. Then he stopped moving his wrapped arm. Ah, damn it. Wrist and joints locking again, he said, annoyed, figuring whoever this was had injured himself. Asia was the first to act. She rushed to his side and summoned forth her twilight healing, covering the man in a bright glow. Erg, he groaned as the pain slowly receded. When it was gone completely, he took in a deep breath before smiling at the nun-turned devil. Thanks for that, Nachan, he said, making Asia blush in embarrassment at the title. And no. It was no problem at all, really, she replied, waving her hands frantically. He chuckled at her flustered face, then regarded everyone in the room with a critical eye. Can someone tell me where I am, please? He asked politely. Some portal technique opened up under me and now I'm here where here is and I'd like to see if I can get back home. I believe it would be more prudent to know who you are first, suggested Surzex as he stepped forward and stood between the young man and Rias in case he turned out to be a threat. Me? Oh, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, from the Hidden Leaf Village, the blonde said, then took notice of Kaneko. Hey, she alright? He asked, moving forward and clearly concerned. You're full of chakra, the white-haired girl murmured. His eyes widened at that and squatting down in front of the young girl and examining her. After a moment, the blonde nodded before his form became enshrouded in a flickering gold energy that had black markings on his torso. His eyes were a deep orange with slit pupils and 2 bangs shot upward in the form of horns. Kaneko was looking on in shock at how warm, bright and protective his chakra was. It was like the sun she loved to bathe in so much, or a nice warm fire she could curl up next to. It made her natural senses go into overdrive and she had to fight herself to stop from releasing her Nico features. He placed his fingers lightly on her brow and after a moment, the young Kagero gasped and her body relaxed. Better? Synced our chakra and sensory skills so that you can sense my chakra without being overwhelmed. Sorry, my chakra levels overloaded your sensory abilities, he said as he stood, and the aura around him vanished. Ignoring what he said, Kaneko stood and hugged him around the waist and let out a purr. Mine, she muttered in a daze. Eh? What the dash? The whiskered blonde yelped, then started trying to pry her arms off him, but being a rook, Kaneko held firmly onto him. Kaneko here is a Nekashu. She likes your chakra, Ajuka said, his mind already functioning in terms of calculations to explain her odd behavior, and realized what was going on. Seraphal giggled, finding the clingy kitty cat's behavior cute. Okay, can someone please get her off me and tell me what's going on? Naruto strained. A laugh was heard and a red-headed woman dressed in a high-collared white blouse that was beneath a green loose-fitting dress seemed to shimmer into existence like a mirage, forming. She wore a dark blue band on her left wrist, similarly colored combat sandals that had her toes and heels exposed, and a black clip that parted her hair to the left. Said hair was incredibly long, reaching down to her ankles with shoulder-length bangs that framed her heart-shaped face. Finishing off her look was a pair of expressive violet eyes. No problem, for the explanation part at least, Sochi, she said, smiling lightly. Naruto froze, his jaw dropping and his focus fixed on the new arrival, Ka-chan. Wow, I mean, no, what does it matter? The woman went up and gave Kaneko a look off. She said, to which Kaneko froze, then quickly, albeit reluctantly, let go of the person who had such stunning chakra, only for the redhead to take her place hugging him. Relative of yours? Azariel asked. Never seen her before in my life. The current Lucifer replied. Letting go of Naruto and turning to the devils, angels, and fallen angel, the woman spoke with a smile. Alright, why don't I just explain a few things before we get started? Suggested the female redhead calmly, earning nods from the others. Now, for everyone present with one exception that already knows, she paused to give Naruto a smile before continuing. My name is Kushina Uzumaki, and yes, I'm related to Naruto here. I'm his mother. And I know why you were all brought here. At that, Surzex blinked before sighing in relief. Finally, now can you tell us what's going on here, Miss Uzumaki? Ugh, she groaned, turning to him to show her displeasure. Don't be so formal. It's really annoying, Tebane. Kaa-chan, your tick. What's that, Naruto-kun? You saying something? Kushina asked, arching a thin brow at her son's voice. No, Kaa-chan, Naruto said, his mouth clicking shut audibly. Surzex, meanwhile, blinked at the verbal tick at the end, and then sweat dropped at how annoyed she grew at using it. I'll try to keep that in mind then. Would you mind if we just use your first name? That's what I was getting at, Tebane. She twitched. Damn it. I thought I was over that stupid tick, coughing, so that his chuckle would be hidden. Michael smiled at the woman. You were saying? Kushina shrugged without a care and an easygoing smile on her face. Right, sorry. As I was saying, I asked the old man to bring you all here. He even reconstructs my physical body so I could join you and we could all look over the life of one of my son's counterparts that lives in a reality that is linked to the one you all came from. Alternate reality that mixes our respective worlds. He put it down a book. I've got it with me. Of all the things the older members expected her to say, that was not on their mental lists in the slightest. Who is the old man, Miss Kushina? Seraphal asked politely. She was normally hyperactive and not one for formalities, but she could tell this red-headed woman was strong. It was enough to impress her, possibly enough to consider her a place in her peerage. Before Kushina could answer, another presence made themselves known. She speaks of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of the 6 paths from the elemental realm. An old friend of mine, actually. Ophis answered, stepping out from behind a particularly large piece of rubble. Ophis? Many of the 3 faction members cried out in surprise, making her brow twitch. Refrain from your astonished cries before I reduce you to nothing, she calmly threatened. I don't take kindly to bothersome noise such as that. No one was dumb enough to comment. Can't we just get a summary or skim through this alternate life? Azazel asked with a raised brow. Shaking her head negatively, Kushina answered, no, we need to see it through to the end. Trust me, pages go blank if you try reading them out of order like that. Don't worry though, your world has had time stop entirely while we're here. So, you don't need to be concerned or afraid of anyone noticing your absence. The old man promised me that. That brought a great relief to the faction leaders, for they were concerned that being away from their home would leave it open to inevitable chaos. So Issei began unsurely, what do we do? Irina rolled her eyes at her childhood friend's rather childish question. Well, the only way out is obvious. If we can't just skip, then we need to reel the whole thing through. At that, Ophis got their attention by clearing her throat. When they turned to her, she simply said, come. Confused and curious, the others complied with her order and followed the petite goddess to a more open area of the ruined cathedral. It held a massive crater that was filled with transparent pink liquid. Curiosity got the better of Naruto, and he stepped up to it first, standing next to Ophis as he peered into the water. Before his very eyes, it shifted and swirled before it projected a reflection of himself. However, the reflection was him as a child. It then shifted to him as a genin before shifting to his older years, him in his Sage Mode outfit, QB Chakra Mode, 6-path Sage Mode, and finally to him just after his final clash with Sasuke, wounds and all. What is this? He asked, amazed at what just happened. A reflecting pool, Ophis answered calmly. It reflects yourself throughout your life, which makes it the perfect medium for us to use. Use for what, Lady Ophis? Gabriel asked, her tone respectful of the dragoness's position. We shall use it to show what is happening within the book Uzumaki had the sage create, she answered, pointing to Kushina. The red-headed woman took a glance at the pool before she smiled brightly. That's a great idea. We can all get comfortable in front of it as we read. From her palm, she presented an intricate seal designed like a lotus flower that gave off a red glow. In a burst of smoke, a large book was seen in her hands and she gestured for the others to take their seats. I'll read the first chapter. Seeing as I asked the old man to make the book for us, no one argued with her as they took their seats. Naruto took his next to Kushina, not wanting to waste any future opportunities of bonding time with his mother. He had lost her twice, once at birth, and the next after she helped him fight Kurama. No one could blame him for feeling a bit clingy. Gale Symphony, Chapter 1, Pilot Chapter. I like to think of myself as an observant woman. After all, I share a territory with a rival of mine, and we both have eyes for talent. Rias blinked, surprised. How the opening was in her point of view? That was interesting. Most of the humans here in Ko, however, didn't have the kind of talent that I needed. Some barely had potential, and it would have taken much too long for us to bring them up to snuff for what lies ahead. At that, the devils and angels both sighed. That was always an annoying factor in regards to the evil peace and brave saint systems. Recently, I had been fortunate enough to gain a new pawn, who holds a sacred gear. I thought it was simply a twice critical at first, but I realized later on that it was actually the fabled boosted gear, one of the 13 Longinus. Alongside this pawn was a new bishop, who also had a sacred gear, the Twilight Healing. While both are great for my peerage, they both still needed a great deal of help, Issei-san in particular. Sure, he had a great sacred gear, but he also had practically zero aptitude for magical capability. Issei sighed. That would hurt more if he didn't know it was true. But he knew he could handle things just fine as it was with his way of doing things. Looking over Kushina's shoulder on a curious whim at the next line, Rias cringed. Oh, she did not like this at all. She sat back down and flashed her bishop an apologetic look, knowing this was going to hurt. As for Asia-san, she is much too timid and kind-hearted for what's to come. As much as I hate to admit this, even if it's just to myself, she may become more of a liability in the future, a crippling point that will tear us down. Asia gasped, then looked at Rice with a hurt expression. A liability? Rias considered her a liability? For the record, Asia, other me. Rias said. I also hate to admit that Sona might be a better king than myself. She picked her peerage so easily, and she spent time and dedication into making them valued pieces of her peerage. She didn't wait like I did, something that has proven to be costly for me. I was worried as the date for my meeting with him drew closer, and I couldn't help but think that, despite everything we've done thus far, my efforts won't be enough for what may come. Asia perked up. Rias was just worried about having to deal with Riser. No wonder she was doubtful. She hadn't meant to upset the ex-nun by saying she was a liability. Recalling what the Phoenix had been like, that made sense. Asia had to confess she really hadn't been prepared to deal with that, and had been little more than a target that Rias had to keep herself between so Riser wouldn't hurt her. She still felt guilty about that at times. I needed time to think, so I didn't show up for school and took a walk through my town. I had hoped to clear my head and come up with something, but the stress and anxiety proved stronger than I estimated. It wasn't until I passed by a new music store, one that was playing some soothing music from their outdoor speakers, that I found something to help me calm down. Wonder what that was? Irina asked. Stories switching to third person from here on out, Kushina said. Rias Gremi curiously opened the door to the music store, taking a cursory glance at the different instruments and equipment that was. Shouldn't that be were rather than was? Azazel asked. No. In this case, saying was is the correct grammar, Ajuka said. Shut it, Mr. Know-it-all. The fallen angel scowled. On display. She saw guitars, pianos and keyboards, drum sets, different forms of brass instruments like trumpets and the like, and even some software that helped with musical editing and similar intentions. Running the store was a woman with stunning white hair that reached her waistline, teal eyes that almost glowed, and a pale complexion that was flawless. She was dressed in a black button-down shirt, matching slacks and white shoes. Around her neck was a tie that was as teal as her eyes while her hair had messy bangs, but they just added to her appeal. The perverts all whistled at the sight of the woman. Not bad. Welcome, she greeted. Can I help you with anything? I heard music playing on the speakers outside, Rias answered. It was nice, and I was just wondering who was playing. As something pre-recorded, most likely. Kiba shrugged. The woman raised a brow with an amused twitch of the lips. I'm glad that someone appreciates his efforts. That would be someone who hangs out here a bit too much. He's in the back, if you want to meet him. So it wasn't pre-recorded stuff after all. Interesting. Wonder who was playing. Irina smirked lightly. Nodding, the red-headed young woman gave a grateful smile. Thanks, no problem. Oh, just to warn you, the woman began, he's not exactly someone who can hold a conversation. Rias raised a brow in curiosity before she mentally shrugged it off and went to the back. Going through the door, her blue-green eyes widened slightly at the studio before her that was filled with state-of-the-art equipment that looked far superior to whatever the store itself was selling. Holding out on the best stuff isn't that bad for business? Gasper asked Kaneko, who shrugged, and, sitting at a piano with large orange headphones, was a blonde teen that looked to be her age. He had wild blonde hair that was slightly matted down by his headphones, and strangely whiskered cheeks that reminded her of Kitsune Yokai. Naruto's jaw dropped. No way. His other version of himself? That's who had been playing. He was surprisingly dressed in the Ko Academy uniform, but his tie was loosened and the top button was undone, giving him a more comfortable look. Naruto made a face. Uniforms? Ties? Ugh, gag him. The lack of originality and identity made him sick. The blazer of the uniform was draped over one of the chairs in the studio, and he seemed to be lost in the music. Music she couldn't hear because his headphones were plugged into the speakers. Naruto hummed. True, he wasn't very oriented or inclined with music, but it seemed his other was. Then again, he was usually training. She spotted an extra pair by the computers and sound systems, so she walked over and put them on before plugging them into another auxiliary port. As soon as she did, she felt the soothing sounds of the music produced wash over her. Its effect was almost instant, and she felt her worries drown away in the sound. The gentle sounds of the woodwinds blended so beautifully with the strums of the guitar at the beats of the drum, and at the core of it all was the piano keystrokes that were supplied by the blonde seated away from her. Relaxing into her seat, she closed her eyes and simply enjoyed the music with her enhanced devil senses. It was a wonderful feeling, having her troubles simply fade away with the symphony. She recognized the style as jazz in nature, but it held a certain flair to it that she couldn't help to appreciate. The blonde Uzumaki blinked. What was jazz? Slowly, the music faded into silence, and she opened her eyes to look at the blonde teen. He slowly opened his own, and they were a stunning shade of azure blue that looked to be as deep as the oceans themselves. A faint smile was seen on his face, one that only enhanced his natural roguish appeal. Issei gave Naruto a dirty look at that. That is true, Zenobia said as an offhanded comment, studying the image and then the actual Naruto. That description fit. Naruto blushed at that, much to his mother's amusement. She smiled as well and removed her headphones just as he did. She slowly made her way over to him as he pulled out a small laptop and typed in some notes. He must have heard her approach, for he looked up as soon as she stepped onto the smooth carpet his piano rested on. That was wonderful, she praised, earning a curious look from him. Your music, she clarified. I listened to you play. Realization hit him, and he turned back to his laptop with a noticeable flush on his cheeks. He must not receive many compliments. I can't believe I never noticed him before at the academy. He's definitely got a face to remember with those markings. Thanks, but as for seeing me in a school, I don't do well in a classroom. Paperwork, test scores, and lectures only confuse and bore me. I learn better by actually doing, Naruto told Rias. She nodded. A kinesthetic learner. The door to the studio opened, and the woman at the front walked in with a small smile. All right, Naruto, she began. Time for you to get going. It's been well over the hour you requested. He turned to her for a moment before closing his eyes with a defeated sigh. Nodding in understanding, he packed up his laptop in its carry-on case and shouldered it while carrying his school bag lazily by its top strap. As he walked out, he grabbed his blazer and carelessly laid it over his other shoulder before waving at the woman. She in turn waved back with her smile becoming a grin. See you soon, yeah? He waved over his shoulder as he left the store, Rias and the woman exiting the studio to re-enter the main room of the building. I see what you mean about him not being a conversationalist, the Gremory heiress mused aloud. Wonder why? Seraphol asked. Wait, you're an heiress? Naruto asked the youngest redhead present. She nodded. Don't make a big deal of it. I like being treated as if status isn't a factor. He nodded. Yeah, that's how he was when I first met him. Took me weeks before I figured out he was mute, she replied offhandedly, catching Rias's interest. Pardon? Naruto asked. Mute? Mute? I thought he just kept to himself. Well, that too, but he showed me he was mute after a couple of weeks. It was during one of my random spiels that I asked his opinion on, and he just answered back in sign language. Oh, that must have been why she never really noticed him. In Ko, a majority of the students were rather loud and excitable, especially when certain people were within view. Rias and Akino shared a grin at that. Being Ko Academy's two great ladies, they knew exactly what that line was talking about. How often does he come here? A few times a week. He's always working on different tracks, and he told me that he wanted to make a CD someday when he was finished. How long has he been working on it? Here, the woman smiled fondly and looked at nothing in particular. Going on 2 years now. Say what? The Occult Research Club member said, surprised. Impressive dedication. Michael said, his sister Gabriel nodding. 2 years? Rias repeated, shocked at how long it was taking. The first year was actually me showing him a few things, mostly how to use the editing equipment in the studio. After a while, he found his own groove and rolled with it. Pun intended. Everyone snickered at that. The two women shared a small laugh at the simple joke. Well, thanks for introducing me and telling me a bit about him. With that, she walked out of the store and headed back to the academy. She took hurried steps down the path Naruto walked before she spotted him a fair distance away, sporting his orange headphones once more as he strolled down the sidewalk. Not wanting to lose him in the crowd he was about to cut through, she hurried after him. Oh? Kushina said, grinning deviously as her eyes glinting with a playful wickedness that was just itching to cause trouble. What is this? An attractive young lady showing interest in my son? Era looks that way, Kushina. My bucho. See something you like, do you? Akino teased, her expression matching the Uzumaki woman's. Rias and Naruto both blushed and gulped. The former of which let out a squeak of help me while Naruto buried his face in his hands. Okay, Akino meeting his mom was a bad idea. As she power walked, so that it wouldn't look so strange, she pushed her senses outwards to try and get a feel for the blonde teen. She didn't know why she did, but a nagging feeling in the back of her mind prompted her to do so, and what she felt echo back to her made her glad she listened to that feeling. She felt an above-average level of power from Naruto, with most of it centered around his upper chest, just below his neck. Guess my energy core is located in a different spot in that reality, Naruto mused. A surge of excitement rushed through her, and she smiled brightly before changing her pace to a light jog. She noticed him pause in his own steps and turned back to look at her with a raised brow. This only made her mentally smirk, for there was no way he would have known she was coming since he was wearing those headphones. It meant that he must have sensed her approach, which further proved that he had some hidden power. Back turned, can't hear her coming, something had to let him know. Rosweiss said. Having served as a Valkyrie, she'd seen various levels of situational awareness and several factors that contributed to them. Pleased to see that he waited for her to catch up to him, he regarded her silently with his brows still raised. I was hoping to walk with you back to the academy, she answered his silent question. He tilted his head and raised a hand to speak to her in sign language, something she hadn't needed to know beforehand. I can't understand what you're trying to tell me, Naruto-san. The two ninjas raised brows at that. Hand signs being used for communication? While they did understand the concept, trying to do that back home could have gotten them attacked, since the one who you were trying to communicate with would assume you were attempting to use a jutsu on them. He blinked in surprise and narrowed his eyes slightly. Seeing the accusation, she raised her hands up placatingly and explained, that woman at the store told me your name. I apologize if I'm coming off as rude. His accusing look sobered to a casual one, making her smile. I don't think we've ever met before today. He shook his head, prompting her to offer him a hand. I'm Rias Gremory. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-san. He looked at the offered hand for a moment before he took it in his own and shared a shake with the beautiful redhead. Excuse me? Naruto yelped as his voice rose an octave. Face blazing so much he felt dizzy, and he was sure he didn't have any blood in the rest of his body. Well, seems you got a bit of something from your dad personality-wise. Kushia teased gleefully, beaming. Oh look, he's all embarrassed. Serafal and Acneal cooed. The remainder of the group all looked at Naruto with sympathy, while Issei looked like he wanted to strangle Naruto. But he held himself back. Rias was a beauty, after all, and if Naruto had gotten a thing for attractive redheads from, then that made sense. He still didn't like it though. Rias herself, however, quickly came to Naruto's rescue by snatching the book and picked up on the reading to got everyone's attention back on the book to give him time to relax. Once his hand was free again, he set down his school bag and pulled out a small notebook and a pen before scribbling something quickly on it. Turning it to her, she read, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you too. She nodded after reading it, prompting him to put the notebook in the small pocket on the front of his shirt, something that wasn't on standard uniforms. Needs to carry that notebook somewhere if it's how he communicates with those that don't know sign language, Gabriel said with a nod. Kushina, meanwhile, had noticed the book was missing, then shot Rias an annoyed look and snatched it back from her. She said nothing about it, simply falling in step with him as they headed for the academy. As they walked, she noted that he was a head taller than she was, and his marked cheeks looked natural instead of drawn on. He also had his headphones hang around his neck, resuming the music at full volume so that they could project it loud enough to hear. Are you a part of the music club, Naruto-san? She asked, getting a headshake from him. Really? I'm surprised. You definitely have talent. That is a bit surprising. Though for sure your other self would be. Asia pointed out. Naruto shrugged. This is a different version of me. I have no idea why he wouldn't, but hopefully it'll be explained. He looked away from her at that, and she noticed his cheeks were once again flushed, proving her earlier theory correct. He really didn't get many compliments if he reacted so bashfully. Akino licked her lips with her eyes gleaming. Oh, no doubt at all that her other was going to enjoy that. Did you try to apply for the club before? She continued, earning another shake of the head. Why not, if I may ask? He pulled out his notebook and scribbled his answer before handing it to her. I didn't feel like it. I've listened to them before, and I don't like the style they use. Yes, I suppose a clash of styles would be problematic. She handed him back his notebook and continued, well, have you signed up for any club? She was pleased to see him respond in a negative, this time giving her more attention. You know that Sauna will scold you if you don't join one, right? Rias blinked, then smirked along with the rest of the occult research club. Well, this was gonna be good. It was obvious what other Rias was after, and what she was doing. I tend to avoid her whenever she's nearby. I have more than enough tardies and absences to warrant punishment. Naruto dash. He paled. OSHIT. Rosweiss quickly moved and positioned herself between Naruto and Kushina, shielding him. Out of the way. The kunoichi growled. No. It isn't even the actual him that's skipping class, so why should he be punished for it? I'll move only when you either calm down or kill me, the former Valkyrie said firmly, eyes narrowed. Naruto gawked at Rosweiss, stunned. Damn, did this woman have backbone? Facing down his mother when she was in full red hot-blooded habanero mode like that without a speck of fear. Naruto was impressed. She giggled at his blunt response. Somehow, I'm not surprised, no offense. He shrugged and waved her off, a small smile on his face. She mentally noted that it was a nice smile. Rias and Naruto flushed again. What if I offered you a way out of trouble? He raised a brow before motioning her to go on. I run the Occult Research Club, and I'd like to offer you an invitation to it. And here we go. Kiba said. He looked skeptical and wrote down, why? I've never really shown interest in the occult before. You don't need to have an early interest to become a member. Besides, you won't know if it does interest you unless you give it a try. He turned away with a thoughtful expression, and she mentally hoped he would agree to join. It was an agonizing, for her, couple of minutes before he turned back to her and shrugged with a faint smile, nodding afterwards in agreement. Baited, hooked, and reeled in. Zenobia sighed. Sure, the ORC members weren't evil devils, but it still gave off the vibe that other Rias was taking advantage of his troubles for her own gain. Or maybe that was just her upbringing in the church talking, and to be honest, they hadn't done a very good job of that, as was evident by her lack common knowledge on the life of a normal person, and had to learn how to integrate herself into ordinary life. Honestly, the way she'd been raised had caused her to be so lacking in how to be an ordinary person that one of the things she'd done after being excommunicated from the church, and deciding to join the occult research club as Ria's second night, because she had nowhere else to go after learning the truth of God's death, was bring a box of condoms to school on her first day. She gave him a beautiful smile in response that made his cheeks flush once more. Excellent. I'll come find you after classes are over. He blinked at how quickly she wanted him to join before noting how they had already walked through the gate and were on the school grounds. I'll also talk to Sauna and ask her to back off on scolding you, she continued before adding mentally, and also to back off in general. Good thing I noticed you first. Take that, Sona, Seraphal huffed, glaring at Rias, who just smirked. He nodded in understanding, and she bid him goodbye before heading off to her current class. Holding up his wrist, he checked the time and saw that he had history next. With a grimace, he ignored the schedule and headed for the school's roof. Kushina and Roswise had another stare down at that. And yet again, Naruto admired the Silverette's courage. He wasn't a history buff, and he wasn't planning on becoming one. So, I believe he has a sacred gear, Rias concluded, informing her, Queen, Akino Himejima. What a sacred gear is will be explained later. But I will say this much, a very special type of equipment. Azazel said. Akino tapped her chin thoughtfully, giving a small hum as she went over what her king and closest friend had told her. Uzumaki, I don't think I've heard much about him. I suppose any rumors about him are as silent as he is. That was terrible. Gabriel said with a shake of her head, both for the joke and the insensitivity of it. That was in slightly poor taste, Rias admonished. My apologies. If I am going to add Naruto-san into my peerage, then I want the rest of us to welcome him fairly and not poke fun at his mutism. I'm going to bring him here personally, so please make sure the others are here beforehand. Is mutism even a real word? Falbium yawned. Yes. There is selective mutism disorder, after all. Azazel pointed out. Yes, Bucho. Finding Naruto was a bit more difficult than she thought. After getting a copy of his schedule from Sona, she expected to find him in his calligraphy class. Instead, she was informed by the teacher that he was absent and that they hadn't heard from Naruto all day, neither have his other teachers. Wow, not hearing form a mute Issei said, only to yelp as Zenobia punched him in the arm. Not funny. She frowned. Okay, I get it, bad joke, he said, nursing his bruise. So, while she outwardly made it look like she was searching for him, inwardly she used her senses to find him. She got a response from the roof, and she made her way there to see him leaning against the railing with his hands in the air in front of him. She raised a brow when she saw that nothing was there, but then noted that he had his headphones on again. Yeesh, your other is really attached to those things, isn't he? Seraphal said. Naruto nodded. Looked like it. She saw him swaying his head to music she couldn't hear, his fingers dancing in the air as if they were hitting the keys of a piano. Realization came to her as she saw that he was playing along with the music, immersing himself in it despite not having a live instrument in front of him. Such dedication to an art made her unconsciously smile, for she believed that he could apply that dedication to other areas, namely to her peerage. That kind of dedication, my wife would like it, I just know it. Her family always did respect things like that. Surzek said. Walking over to him, she wasn't surprised to see him stop playing when she got within a certain distance. He turned to her and removed his headphones, giving her a small wave in greeting. I was looking for you, Naruto-san, she informed him. I told you I would find you after classes ended, remember? He nodded once. Well, come along then. I'm going to take you to the clubroom now to meet the others. Nodding again, Naruto put away his headphones and gathered his bags, stuffing the school blazer into his school bag so he wouldn't have to wear it. His clothes also remained loose, which she couldn't blame him for. For girls as gifted as her in certain areas, the uniforms were very restricting. Thanks for getting it. Naruto muttered. Uniforms, ugh. Hated them, Issei pouted. He liked the girls' uniforms for that very reason, leading him out of the main school building and for the older one. She guided him inside and took her position behind her desk while the other members of the Occult Research Club regarded him. He couldn't help raising a brow at the members, not expecting them all to have something in common. The Occult Research Club members all snickered at that. Oh, if only other Naruto knew. For starters, Akino was one of the two great ladies of the academy. She had her own fanbase, just like Rias did. It wasn't exactly surprising to see her in the club, though, considering how often the two were seen together. Rias and I are best friends, so why wouldn't we be together often? Akino said. Kiba Yudo, who was regarded for his politeness and good looks, was a surprise. Naruto had seen him a couple of times helping the kendo club, and he thought his fellow blonde was a member, despite the club being comprised of nothing but female students. You'd be surprised how often that's been brought up to me, Kiba admitted. Kaneko Tuja was known as the school mascot for her adorable looks. Honestly, Naruto couldn't blame the students for seeing the petite girl that way. Her features reminded him of cats, and he absently wondered if she styled her hair to look like folded cat ears. Kaneko made an iffy motion with one hand. Not too far off, considering her other hadn't shown what she actually was. Naruto couldn't help but praise him for being so adamant in his beliefs and admirations, absently finding himself jealous of how vocal Issei could be while he couldn't utter a word. And lastly was Asia Argento, the newest girl of the school that was rumored to be staying at Issei's home. He didn't bother listening to rumors, preferring to determine the worth of them with his own eyes and ears. Based on how close Asia was sitting to Issei, Naruto couldn't deny that something was going on between them. Perhaps a crush on her part for the resident pervert? Kushina muttered something about sealing formulas, brainwashing, and bombs being used to castrate someone at that. Absently, he remembered his late mother telling him that you don't always choose who you fall in love with. Along with that was something along the lines of look underneath the underneath. Something that a family friend always liked to say. Asia flushed. Love? Well, there was no denying she did feel strongly for Issei. The rest of the occult research club's female members looked miffed at that. I wonder how Kakashi is doing, anyway, he mused before Rias spoke up and reclaimed his attention. Everyone, this is Naruto Uzumaki, she informed. He will hopefully become the newest member of our club. He raised a brow at the hopefully she threw in there. Wasn't he already accepted by her? The others introduced themselves. Akino's voice held a slightly sultry undertone that he easily picked up. He couldn't help but blush at her voice, and at how she looked to him with interest. Bashful one in the crosshairs, he's doomed. Azazel said, knowing what Akino was like. Kiba was as polite as always, offering a smile and a handshake that Naruto readily accepted. He was always happy to get a warm welcome, Kiba shrugged. He saw no reason not to give a warm welcome to someone that could become a friend, after all. Kaneko was rather stoic in her greeting, which strangely only added to her natural, cat-like charm. He didn't understand it, but it probably wasn't important, so he simply gave her a wave. Issei looked to him briefly before turning away with a grumble of damn blondes trying to steal his harem. A sweat drop formed on the back of Naruto's head at that. Wow, was this guy insecure? He was mute, and he still had more confidence in himself than Issei seemed to have. Okay, that was hurtful, Issei muttered. Kushina smirked darkly at that, amused. And lastly was Asia, who walked over and gave a polite bow in greeting that he returned. Her innocent aura was absolutely adorable, and he found it an endearing quality that would hopefully remain with her. Innocent people tended to have the most impactful opinions, he believed, for they weren't yet biased by the beliefs of others. Asia smiled at that. Now, Naruto, Rias continued, getting his attention once more, you probably noticed that I said you would hopefully become a member, right? He nodded with a confused expression. Well, the reason for that is because your acceptance is entirely up to you. He raised a brow at that, even more confused than before. There are things you need to know before I ask you if you wish to join us. She paused to take a breath before looking to him seriously, making him pay closer attention. Let me tell you about the three factions. That's the end of this chapter. Kushina said, who's reading next? Chapter 2, Memory Blues and a Proposition. So, Rias continued as she ended her explanation, now that you are aware of the three factions, and of how all of us here are of the devil faction, I need to know if you'll still accept becoming a member of this club. You want to turn my baby boy into a? Kushina began. Relax. Willing to bet it isn't all the PR says. People deserve to be judged on the merits of who they are and choose to be as individuals, Naruto said to soothe his mother's anger. I know, son, but with the life you had to endure with people think on you, I just can't help but find it upsetting, Kushina said, recalling Naruto's life as a Jinchuriki and how people treated her child because they assumed he was a demonic being himself. The members of the three factions all stared at the two before they smiled, the devils all nodding in thanks to the blonde. He'd do very well for himself as a reincarnated angel, Michael muttered, Irina and Gabriel nodding in agreement. Naruto, who had been listening attentively since she started speaking, took a moment to think about everything she had told him. It was definitely a lot to consider, especially the fact about the club being a front for this peerage thing that Rias was king of. Isn't a king supposed to be? Naruto asked, confused. Ranks only, with the positions being the names of the pieces in chess or shogi. Roswias said. Oh. Representative titles and ranks then? Kushina asked. The former servant of Odin nodded. Slowly, he pulled out his handheld notebook and took the time to write out his question. Once he finished, he offered it to the red-headed woman. Akino acted as the passer, handing the notebook to her, king, to read. I understand what you've been saying, but I still don't know enough to make a solid decision. What are the benefits and consequences of this choice? Is it simply a fancy way of saying that I'm a slave to you, or is there something more that I'm missing? You're asking me to change who I am so drastically, and I can't make a call so quickly. The readers paused at that, coming from the Naruto in the story. So he wanted to know both sides of things before deciding. Smart. She nodded as she read, seeing where he was coming from. I suppose I should be happy that you're not rushing into this. It shows that you don't blindly follow offers with tempting outcomes. Bucho, Akino spoke up. Perhaps we should give him time to think about his answer after we answer the questions he offered us. Let him reflect on what he's been told, and come to a decision on his own. Rias nodded in agreement, despite how much she wished Naruto would choose right away. Time was running out, and Akino knew that. But Akino was also someone Rias trusted immensely. If she said to give Naruto time, then she would accept that advice. Rias and Akino smiled at one another. Very well then. She turned her attention back to Naruto and continued, the benefits of becoming a devil are quite a lot. You can gain access to magical power, your physique and lifespan improve greatly to the point of living hundreds of years, you gain the protection of myself and my peerage, and you may one day have a peerage of your own if you rise up in ranking. Think about it, Uzumaki-san. Issei chimed in, a noticeable blush on his face as he giggled pervertedly. You can have your own harem if you work hard enough. Isn't that awesome? Kushina leveled a glare at Issei. Trying to convert my son to a pervert? She said. Issei gulped, grabbing his parts and backing away. Mom, relax, I'll just shred his balls with a raisin gun if it tries making me into a pervert. Naruto said. Let me guess was how Jiraiya was kept in line. She asked dryly. Naruto nodded and she beamed. I'm so proud of you, son. Issei paled. Oh, that was just great. The mama's boy was gonna grind his balls. Naruto gave him a dry look alongside Kaneko. Asia looked uncomfortable about Issei's declaration, and surprisingly frowned in what Naruto assumed to be jealousy. Guess I was right about her having a thing for the pervert. Wonder why though, I can see why that'd baffle my other. Naruto shook his head. Both of the residents of Konoha found it strange. But then, either Issei had some redeeming qualities, or Asia was too innocent to hate perverts. At least that's what they guessed. As for the others, they merely looked amused at Issei's comment, though Naruto noted that it wasn't cruel amusement. It was more like an adult watching a child at play and finding amusement in it. Ignoring his fellow classmate for the time being, Naruto turned back to Rias and waved for her to continue. And here come the negatives. Rias sighed. Rias noticeably frowned at what she needed to say next. Unfortunately, the consequences, as you put it, are about as much as the benefits. For starters, you would gain a weakness for light and holy-based items or weaponry. Also, if you are to speak the name of the Almighty, it causes some mental pain, which can prove to be fatal if you aren't careful enough. She steepled her hands in front of her face as she continued. You also become a natural enemy of the other two factions, the Angels and Fallen. And another negative, if you really see it that way, is that you aren't fully human anymore. For the record, they have to give me and most Fallen reasons to call them enemies. Azazel pointed out, feeling slightly offended. We know, Azazel, but it's still a warning that has to be issued. Surzex told the Fallen. Fine. The Governor-General relented. However, Kiba cut in. While you are classified as a servant of Bucho, the Gremory family have been known to be the most understanding of masters. They treat their servants and peerages with respect and care, comparing them to a family. Bucho is a good king too, Kaneko added from her seat, still as stoic as ever. Rias blushed. But she smiled, feeling warm inside at the support of her family members. She saved my life, Issei added, scratching the back of his head awkwardly. I'd be dead if I wasn't brought into her peerage. Asia-chan too. Naruto turned to look over at Rias. That certainly earned her points in his book. Naruto looked to the ex-nun with a raised brow, making her look away shyly. It's true, she stuttered out, not used to having attention from others. I was able to have friends when I joined the peerage, and I'm happy to have them. She turned back to him with a bright smile. I don't regret my decision to accept her offer. Asia, it was done to bring you back after those Rouge Fallen Angels, Kaneko pointed out. I know. The girl said, but that doesn't change. I don't regret it. Rias gave the others a grateful smile for their supportive words before she turned back to Naruto. I've told you quite a bit today, so take some time to think it over, like Akino suggested. However, I hope you can give me an answer in a couple of days at the least, no more than 2 from now. Akino handed Naruto his notebook back, and he nodded to Rias before he offered the others a small smile. Grabbing his things, he headed out the door and for home. The queen turned to Rias and asked, would you like me to follow him? We don't know if any fallen stragglers are around after the fiasco with those 4 others a few weeks ago. Azazel frowned at that. Rainer. Michael frowned. I remember Rainer, she always was overzealous and wanting to be useful to her superiors. Actually crossed into advars, she sought to be useful so batally. Stopped caring about moral boundaries because of it. Yeesh, I hate how tragic that stuff is, Naruto muttered, having seen his fair share of people like that, such as Haku and Kimimaro. It always bothered him. The trio of angels present all nodded in complete agreement with Naruto's words. Please do. Just make sure he gets home safely, Rias replied, prompting Akino to leave the clubroom. Turning to the others, the heiress concluded, that'll be all for today. Focus on any jobs or flyers you have for the time being. Yes, Bucho, her peerage responded before the club dispersed for the day. Arriving at his apartment complex, Naruto gave a friendly wave to the owner of the building. She was a nice woman who had offered him a room for cheap if he helped with small repairs alongside his rent. He was happy to accept the deal, considering how most of his funds came from the dwindling money his last caretaker left him and his part-time job. Kushina frowned at that. Heading up to the 2nd floor, he entered his apartment and set his things by the front door. He had a thoughtful expression as he kicked off his shoes and moved over to his small couch. Taking a seat, he leaned back against the cushions and reflected over what he had been told by Rias and the others. In all honesty, Naruto had known that there were people in the world that couldn't be considered human. He himself wasn't fully human either. His mother was only half human, and her mixed blood kept him from being truly human. Whoa! 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 What? Naruto yelped as Kushina looked stunned. All the other readers looked interested. Hybrid, huh? But of what? Not that he was complaining, of course. He was proud of the blood he carried, and he couldn't help but consider it responsible for his immediate interest in music. After all, what race held as much respect for that art than the sirens? A mute that's 75% human and the remaining 1/4 being siren. Interesting, Ajuka mumbled. Well, seemed Rias had an interesting taste in peerage members. A siren? Naruto asked. My other and his version of my mom are part siren. Dangerous yet beautiful creatures, portrayed as femme fatale who lured people with their enchanting music and voices. From a scientific standpoint, a way to describe their powers is that a siren's vocal frequency can directly affect the brain's pleasure centers. Within seconds of hearing them sing, you'd be completely enthralled. The current Beelzebub explained. Mom is a beautiful and dangerous being like a siren. I can see Dad agreeing to that. Naruto teased, his mom going pink in embarrassment since she knew it just as well as her child did. A siren being a fitting description of her. Minato would agree with that. But on the flip side, it was that same blood that was responsible for his mutism. A siren's voice is a dangerous thing, something his mother told him many times before he lost her. Naruto stiffened, going pale. No, not there, too. Please. He stuffed his fingers in his ears and clamped his eyes shut. Not a word, he said to the others. They all looked at his with understanding and sympathy. He didn't want to see or hear about this. According to his parents, on the day he was born and he gave his first cry, he unconsciously drew upon his latent vocal power, and it was mixed in. Unfortunately, a newborn has no control of themselves or any sort of power they may have, and the stress that was put on his vocal cords was too much to handle. The devils, Angelus, and Fallen Angel all winced, figuring how that had gone. Wasn't hard to either. For her part, Kushina looked horrified. The result was the loss of his voice, his first cry being his only cry. Naruto rubbed his throat with a wince. He blew his own vocal cords. While his mother tried to hide it, he could tell that Kushina was devastated over what happened. He was too, for he would never be able to sing with his mother, never know what his voice may have sounded like. So glad that didn't happen to me, Naruto muttered, shuddering. But he never blamed her, or her blood, something she did constantly whenever she thought he wasn't listening. He loved his mother, he loved his siren heritage, and he loved music. That was enough for him. Least he's content. Yuto Kiba smirked. After his mother was killed, his father Minato tried to care for him alone. However, being a single father was hard for the man. He tried his best, even having Kakashi give him a hand on a few occasions, and Naruto loved the man. But he was still glad that he had called his own mother for help. Grandma Tsunade was a wonderful woman, and her niece was like the sister he never had. He believed that things would be okay, and that he would heal from the loss. That is, until he lost the remainder of his family barring Kakashi. Oh no, Naruto still didn't know who did it, but all he remembered was coming home from school to the sight of police at his home and a crime scene unit gathering evidence. Based on what he had learned from Rias, along with his mother's otherworldly blood, Naruto knew now that it couldn't have been done by humans, unless they had holy or demonic weapons to pull it off. What? Everyone in the group, with the exception of Ophis, all cried. There was no fire, but the wounds he saw on his family looked burnt at the edges. Not to mention the strange bullet holes that they suffered, but no bullets on the scene. Sure, the killers could have picked up the bullets, but there still should have been at least 1 or 2 that were stuck in the bodies. The non-human reader's eyes widened at that. After that horrible day, Naruto stayed with his dad's teacher, a perverted writer named Jiraiya. The man made Issei's peeping look amateurish, and he proved to be a self-proclaimed master of peeping. It was his excursions that helped inspire him to write his Aika Aika series, which wound up being a major hit. Note to self, find this Aika Aika series stuff, Issei muttered lowly. All that showed Naruto, though, was how many perverts there were in the world, and it was sadly a rather high number. At that, everyone with the exception of Naruto, who still had his ears plugged and his eyes shut, turned and gave Issei deadpan looks all at once. Now, he had a great appreciation for the fair sex, but he wouldn't view them as simple pleasures to the eyes or body. He wanted something more in a significant other, someone who could be independent, strong, thoughtful, and hopefully have as much of a love for music as he did. Sadly, he hadn't found her yet, but he wasn't giving up hope. The females present all smiled at Naruto. Sure, the music part might be inaccurate, but as for the rest they had no trouble seeing and supporting that. While the man was a massive pervert, Jiraiya was still a man who lent a hand and an ear whenever Naruto needed one. He was the support that Naruto needed, considering how Kakashi had been called back into service not long after his family's death. The blues never stopped playing for Naruto's life though. Jiraiya had grown ill a few years ago, and his aged body wasn't strong enough to fight it off. He ended up asking the doctors to pull the plug and left Naruto the rights to his books. Issei solemnly saluted for the loss of his fellow pervert. He didn't want them, though. He just wanted to stop losing people he cared about. The rights were eventually sold to a group of authors who worked for Jiraiya, and it was the profit he made that helped him get by for so long. Most of it went towards food, house payments, and education, all of which ate away at it faster than he realized they would. Talk about rough, Gasper said. By the time he entered Ku Academy, he had sold Jiraiya's old home in exchange for his current apartment, and found himself a part-time job so that he wouldn't go under. He still found it ironic that he worked at an establishment that sold a food he and his mother both loved. Back to Rias's offer, Naruto was on the fence about it. Naruto opened his eyes as a weight settled into his lap and saw Kaneko there. Pass the stuff you didn't want to hear, she said, pulling his fingers from his ears. Thanks, he said, then blinked as the catgirl shifted in his lap and nuzzled up against him. Kaneko? What are you doing? Nothing. Just getting comfortable, she replied. Once she was content, her eyes glazed again. So warm, so comfy mine. She muttered like a sleepwalker in a trance. Naruto shot a look around. This is going to be a normal thing with her around me, isn't it? Looks that way, Akino said, part of her finding it cute. The wizard-type Rook frowned at her physical-type counterpart at that. It was tempting for sure, but the downsides were just as much as the upsides. They balanced out, with one major consideration standing out in the forefront. If he accepted, he gave up his life and freedom. If he denied it, he kept his freedom, but he may lose potential companions in the process. It was something he craved ever since he lost Jiraiya and was left alone. Everyone winced. That was a nasty crossroads, Naruto. For what it's worth, even if that siren version of you declined my other's offer, no reason we couldn't still be friends. Rias pointed out. He nodded in reply. Now to see what his other was going to do. He still wished Kakashi would leave the service, but the man dedicated his life to it, for it was the service that his friends and squad mates Obito and Rin sacrificed their lives for. At the mention of Obito, Kushina pursed her lips, eyes blazing. Grief was one thing, but there was no excuse for any of the things he did or caused to happen. Obito strapped a bomb on her newborn child, and by controlling Kurama, he killed many villagers, herself and Minato included, while simultaneously creating a conspiracy that forced the blame on the Uchiha. Then a few years later, he helped wipe out his own clan. His use of the Akatsuki to kill innocent people and steal the tailed beasts, turning Sasuke against his friends and Konoha by turning him into a murderous maniac, starting the Fourth Ninja War, and killing many of the people who fought to stop him. Yakushina was not happy hearing about Obito. Naruto respected that decision, once again remembering a lesson he had learned from the people who cared for him. That lesson was those who break laws and rules are scum, but those who forsake friends and family are worse than scum. Kakashi didn't want to forsake their memory, and Naruto would respect the man's decision and resolve. Naruto nodded at that. That still didn't lessen the pain of being alone though. Naruto nodded again. Being alone sucked. He gave a silent sigh as he laid himself across his couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. What should I do? He mused, hoping for an answer. None came, not that he was surprised. Looking at the time, he noted that it was getting late. So, he decided to put the thought of Rias's offer in the back of his mind in favor of making some dinner and getting some rest. He'd ponder on it some more tomorrow. It's not like he would go to school where it would only distract him. To be fair, I will accept the responsibility for that then, Rias said. Uzumaki-kun didn't show up for school today, Bucho, Akino informed Rias as she handed her some freshly made tea. I assume he's avoiding this place so he can think in private. It is a big decision, after all. Serafal nodded. Let the cute little siren get his head on straight about it. That's fine, Rias replied after taking a sip. He seems like a trustworthy person, so I doubt he'll skip out on giving me an answer, even if it's to decline my offer. What if he does? Akino pressed, looking concerned for her closest friend. What will we do? What we've been doing before I noticed him, Rias answered. I can't expect Naruto to be the defining piece that will secure me a victory against Riser. She frowned in distaste at the mere mention of his name. I hate that guy, Rias muttered. If he accepts, then I'll be happy. But if he declines, I'll respect that decision. I can't force my needs onto others, otherwise they will be proven right about us devils and our selfish ways. The devils frowned at that. Sure, it was part of their nature, but still. Akino nodded in understanding, though she held a faint frown that caught Rias's eye. What is it? Did something seem off about Uzumaki-kun? Off? In what way? The queen shook her head unsurely. I don't know, he felt like a human with an above-average aptitude, but I can't help but think that we may have missed something. Well, he is part siren in this, so it was most likely that Zenobia said. Maybe it was just his sacred gear, Rias suggested. We aren't exactly aware of what it is, after all, or if he even has one, Akino argued calmly. It could just be something unique about him in general. Wonder if Siren Me actually does have one of those sacred gear things, Naruto mused. Perhaps, but we shouldn't spend so much time wondering about it. We need to focus on Issei and Asia's training. If I'm going to challenge Riser to a rating game, we all need to be as ready as possible. Rias and her peerage winced at the memory of how that had gone. Understood, Bucho. Panting in exhaustion, Naruto wiped the sweat from his brow as a grin formed on his dirty and scuffed face. His eyes held a green glow that bled back into their natural blue, gazing at the fruits of his training. Hello? Naruto said, looking closely at the pool's image of his other. That was interesting. Seems you do have some power, after all. Surzek said to Naruto. The siren version of me, you mean? the whiskered blonde corrected. A trench was seen on the ground, moving from his standing position to a tree before him. As for the tree itself, it had been vertically bisected. Both halves of the tall tree had tipped over beneath their weight, and he could see that the tree behind the first had a nice, deep cut going into its bark. Looked like they might have came from wind blades, as Ariel mused. An air vacuum could cut like that. His grin grew, and he gave a pleased fist pump for his success. Ever since he had discovered this power, he had been trying to gain some measure of control over it. It wasn't easy, for he was working with something that he couldn't tell anyone about. If the government found out, he would surely be hunted down and brought in as a possible weapon. Naruto shuddered at that. He did not want to be weaponized. He didn't want that. He wanted to live his life away from military. Once the excitement left him, he walked over to his duffel bag and grabbed a bottled water, taking a generous helping of the soothing liquid within. Another downside of his ruined vocal cords was how sensitive they were, and how they constantly grew sore. Drinking water helped somewhat, or at least it felt like it did. Naruto rubbed his throat again. Sure, it wasn't actually him, but it did make him uncomfortable hearing his vocal cords had been overloaded and gotten blown like that. He tensed up at a sudden sensation, then turned to see Roswise smile while giving him a supportive, comforting rub on the back. He looked up and saw that the moon was already getting pretty high in the sky. It was time to call it a night then. Gathering his things, he left the woods and headed for his apartment for a well-deserved meal and rest. During his training, he thought some more about Rias's offer. Since he was so on the fence about it, he thought of a possible solution. He just hoped that it would work out with the beautiful redhead. Rias blushed while Kushina looked amused. Mentally groaning at that offhand thought, Naruto blamed his dad for his interest in red hair. It was that interest that helped him meet his mother, after all. Was wondering when that would come up. Kushina chuckled, smiling fondly. Naruto full-on beamed. You're serious, aren't you? Rias asked in surprise after reading Naruto's answer to her offer. What was it? Rias asked, paying intense attention to the book and the reflecting pool. Nodding, Naruto gave her a determined smile. His answer made sense to him, considering he had experienced it before when Jiraiya had him some lessons on running a company. Most times, employees were hired right on the spot because their skill sets were what the company needed. Not a bad comparison, actually, Irina said thoughtfully, but sometimes a potential employee was placed on something called a probationary period. It was a time before full-time hire where the hopeful employee proved that they had what it took to be part of the company. They were still paid for any work performed, but they could be denied at any time the employer felt they wouldn't be a good fit. If that worked in the real world, why not apply that concept to this whole peerage thing? He would be a temporary member with the option to leave or be denied within the time frame allowed. It was perfect. The angels and devils all had their jaws drop. Say what? Temporary member? This could change everything about both the evil piece and the brave saint systems, Ajuka muttered, wide-eyed, then quickly started to pat himself down, looking for a notepad and something to write with. He had to make a note about this idea. I don't know what to say to this. It's unheard of. Rias continued, still getting over the surprise at such a proposal. I don't even know if it's possible. Theoretically, it could be possible, damn it. And me without anything to take notes of this with. Ajuka said. Naruto tilted his head at her reply before he wrote a rebuttal. You know the devil who created those evil pieces, right? Why not propose this idea to them? I don't mind being the one to test it. Are you nuts? Rias cried, bolting to her feet and staring at Naruto in shock. No way. I won't do something that risky. You can't be serious. She argued, looking to him in concern, which caught him by surprise. If it fails, you would become a devil by force, or something worse might happen. I can't just put your life at risk when you don't need to accept my offer. It's crazy. Seems Rias and her other are in total agreement, Akino said. And for good reason, she's worried about him, Asia said. But you aren't the one risking my life, he wrote back before he gave her a grin. Thumbing his chest, he mouthed out, I am. Yeah, his father was the same way. Minato wasn't afraid of risks, as long as it meant helping others. It was part of why I loved him so much. But Rias, thank you for wanting to look after Naruto. Kushina smiled. She frowned at him, moving around her desk so she could stand directly in front of him. Naruto, I can't let you do this. Please, we can figure something else at a later time. She bit her lip for a moment before she finished, don't ask me to do this. Her blue-green eyes locked onto his blue, and she found herself getting lost in their depths. Such a feeling stunned her, for she never thought she would ever meet someone with such an intense gaze. I have to admit, Naruto does have some very nice eyes. Strong, clear gaze to them too, like he's focused on a goal in the distance, and knows it can be reached as long as you don't quit, and knows that just because something is difficult doesn't mean it isn't doable. Zenobia nodded. She found she liked that. If eyes were the window to the soul, as she'd been taught by the Vatican when they had trained her to be an exorcist, then she had to confess his soul was a powerful one. Shame really if he had been born in their world, then he would have made a good exorcist, and one she wouldn't have minded working with at all. Naruto blushed slightly, feeling bashful at the female knight's words, and that intensity was accompanied by a determined grin. He only nodded, and she knew then that there was no way she would convince him to back down from this. He had made his choice, and he would stick by it. Glad to see my alternate self and I have that in common, Naruto said, feeling pleased. For someone who can't speak, he sure as hell can send a message, she couldn't help thinking, unable to fight a small smile from forming. Sighing in defeat, she nodded in agreement. Fine, I'll call my brother, and see if he could speak with Lord Beelzebub. She paused, visibly anxious, try to tell you his answer tomorrow. He grinned at her reassuringly before he placed a hand on top of her head. The grin forced his eyes closed and he chuckled, missing her cheeks flushed slightly at what would be perceived as an affectionate gesture. Removing his hand, she noticed that his warmth went with him as he waved her goodbye and walked out of the clubroom. Seems your other has a crush, Akino teased. Rias flushed. Damn, her best friend was going to milk this for all it was worth. Unable to do nothing but stare at his back as he walked away with confidence, she whispered aloud, I hope this will work. Era, a familiar, teasing voice spoke up, making Rias mentally groan. That was rather sweet of him, assuring you like that. Don't look too far into it, Akino, Rias warned, giving her, Queen, an annoyed look, complete with brow twitch. He's just a nice guy, is all. Oh, I'm sure he is, agreed the Nadeshiko woman. Nadeshiko? Akino asked, why was that there? I hope you don't mind if I try to steal away his niceties from you, Bucho? She giggled in a conspiring manner. I'd love to have him under me. Kushina glared at Akino, the intensity of her gaze practically burning holes through the girl and wall behind her. Akino yelped at the sheer heat from the gaze at her and hid behind one of the others. Even as much of a sadist as she was, Akino felt Kushina was damn scary. Rias fought a shiver at that. She respected Akino's sadism and enjoyment of teasing innuendos. Gets it from her father, Azazel muttered. But sometimes they left rather vivid mental images. No kidding, Rias said, giving Akino a look. Those very images ganged up on her thought process, and she pondered what Naruto would look like in a more appealing outfit. He was a handsome man, after all, and the academy uniform did not do him justice. Both Rias and Naruto's faces changed. She blushed, he paled. Sorry, Rias cried. Growling to herself, she brutally squashed those traitorous thoughts and prepared to contact her brother. That didn't stop her cheeks from getting flushed. Not that Akino was any better off, considering she was the one who brought up such thoughts. I blame you, Akino, I blame you, Rias growled. Issei pouted. Damn, blonde was going to steal his harem. Wait, sheesh. Seemed him and his other were really in sync. Those were the other Issei's thoughts from Chapter 1. A probationary piece, you say? Ajuka Beelzebub, one of the 4 Satans, repeated in interest. Come on, other me, give up the goods, Ajuka said, almost whining. It amused his fellow Satans when he got this way because he got hooked on an interesting idea. Nodding in confirmation was someone who looked like an older male version of Rias. He was the holder of the title Lucifer, and once went by the name Sirzex Gremory. However, he dropped his family name after taking the title, leaving Rias as the next heir to the Gremory name. Title requirement? Kushina asked with a raised brow. Sirzex nodded. Yeah, it was something Rias-tan asked me to bring up to you. Apparently she has her eyes set on a potential new member of her peerage, and they want a trial period before they give a solid answer. Think it might be possible, Ajuka? Of course, it's possible. Anything's possible, Sirzex. The problem isn't in possibility, it's in results. Ajuka nodded at that. Ajuka turned to his equipment, going over various data before pulling out his files on the evil pieces. I could easily make something to act as a temporary, or as your sister called probationary, piece. The problem is, I won't know the effect it will have on the target unless I see the results for myself. He waved off his friend and added, I doubt anyone would be foolish enough to volunteer for something with such a risk. Ajuka's other is gonna be surprised meeting Sirenera face to face. Seraphal sing-songed. Actually, Sirzex began, giving an amused smile. The potential member already offered to be a test subject for the piece. He couldn't help but find enjoyment in the surprised look Ajuka gave him. So, since you can make one, and someone is volunteering, I'd like to request one right now for my little sister. Thankful as my other no doubt is, I would still like it said that both me and my other object to this. He isn't a gunny pig. Rias huffed. Sighing in amused defeat, the holder of Beelzebub fiddled with his equipment before activating it. The piece created was a pawn, with archaic markings littering it. Ajuka leaned so far over to examine the archaic markings on the evil piece that he almost fell into the reflecting pool. Before you ask, those brands are what make the piece temporary. Your sister simply needs to push her power into it before placing it in the person she's interested in. If everything goes well, she should be able to just as easily remove the piece by pulling it out with her power. Gotta remember that, Ajuka muttered. Grabbing the offered item, Sirzex sent it off to his sister using his personal magic portal. Giving his friend a grateful smile, the Lucifer stated, I'll make sure to have Rias send you her findings on the piece as she uses it. Better have the scientist nodded. She'd better. It's not every day I do favors like this, even for an old friend's family member. He then gave said friend a stern look and added, I expect to have this favor returned also. I'll make it up to you, Sirzex promised with a friendly smile before he left Ajuka to his work. Arriving back in his office, he found his wife and maid waiting patiently for him. Well, Rias-tan has a way to increase her numbers, temporarily anyway. You do realize that this may seem unfair regarding the contract, right, Lord Lucifer? Graphia queried. Sasuke mentally sighed at how his wife demanded to be professional during times they were working. It bothered him to be addressed by a title by his wife, despite her being his maid. She insisted on being my maid, wouldn't listen to a word I said in protest to her doing that. Sasuke groaned. As her brother, I am allowed to do one thing to assist her in this, so long as it isn't anything major, he explained to her. That was something our families agreed on when I tried to argue the marriage contract. The way I see it, helping Rias get another pawn, one that might not even be a permanent member of her peerage, isn't major. How often has a single pawn tipped the balance of a rating game? After all, quite a bit. Actually, Falbium Asmodeus yawned, wishing this was over already so he could go back to sleeping. It was too much work listening to this, and working meant losing, after all. At least that was how he felt about things. Shut it. You know what Riser Phoenix is like. You think I wanted my sister to be trapped in a loveless, arranged marriage with that creature? The male redhead snarled. Graphia could have pointed out the various times a pawn did decide the outcome, but deep down, she too wanted to help Rias. They were family, after all, and she never enjoyed seeing her family in distress. So, she remained silent and resumed helping her king and husband with his work. Sitting at her desk in her clubroom, Rias stared down at the item that could possibly be the boon she desperately needed. She hesitated to reach out for it, which confused her. She never hesitated before, so why was she doing so now? Always need to be careful with new discoveries until you're sure they're fully safe. Ajuka said, gaze still fixated to the new type of evil piece. A brief memory of Naruto's smile entered her thoughts, and she shook her head before frowning. Come on, now I can't believe I'm getting so worked up over a random guy, she admonished herself, reaching out and grabbing the probationary pawn. Getting so worked up over a random guy, huh? Well, unless there was something special about him, you wouldn't be interested. Acneo teased. Well, Ajuka did say sirens are good at enthralling others, maybe that's it. Irina said. True, but that's with their voices, and this siren version of Naruto is mute. So it can't be that. Zenobia pointed out to her old partner. So what could it be? There has to be some kind of connection between them for Rias to get so fixated. What do you think, Rias? I mean, she is your other. Gasper pointed out. Rias buried her face in her hands. Does it look like I know? Oh, just great. This was going to drive her crazy with all the speculation as to why her other liked the mute siren Naruto. What made it worse was they expected her to be bleed to answer about what an alternate version of herself thought or did. Seeing Rias was obviously uncomfortable, Gabriel felt and took pity upon the young female devil and got everyone's attention back by continuing to read. She turned it in her hand before she pushed some of her power into it, making the brands on its body glow as fierce a red as her hair. She absently appreciated how the red contrasted the black coloring of the piece, and at the same time, she gained a hopeful smile. Maybe she had a chance now. Chapter 3. A musician's many intros. How do you feel? Rias asked the blonde musician, having just put the probationary piece into him. And me without a way to copy this down, damn it. Ajuka bemoaned. He was currently laid across the couch in the ORC clubroom. A hand reached up and rubbed his chest where the piece had sunken into him. The feeling it gave off was hard to explain, but it was almost like his body turned into water just long enough for it to sink in without issue. Naruto blinked at that, then turned to Rias's group. Really? He asked. Those whom had been in states of consciousness when made into reincarnated devils all nodded. Mentally shrugging it off, he sat up on the couch and stretched his arms before he popped his back. Rias backed away so he could stand up, watching him as he stretched the rest of his body before turning to her and shrugging. Do you feel any stronger? Even a pawn gets a boost in physique when they're reincarnated. Naruto looked thoughtful before he perked up and wrote his answer. Those markings on the piece might be limiting what I'm capable of. It wouldn't make sense to give me all the perks if I might just decline taking this role full time. Ajuka nodded, wishing he had a pen and notepad right now. Needed notes. That makes sense, I suppose, she relented. We'll have to see what you're capable of later. You told me that you had a shift today, right? He nodded with a small smile. Go ahead and get to your job. We'll meet up later. Thanks, Rias. Naruto said sure it was the siren version of himself, but he figured since his other was mute, he could at least voice that on his other's behalf. No problem at all, Naruto. The heiress said. He nodded again as his smile turned thankful. Waving her goodbye, he left the clubroom. As he left, Rias spotted that he left something behind and moved to grab it. When she raised it up, she saw that it was a flash drive with a label of demos on it. Oh boy, temptation. Devils always have the most trouble with that. Akino giggled. She was torn whether or not to return it to him immediately, for her curiosity was growing on what he could have stored in the device. She reasoned to herself that she could give it to him when she saw him later, smiling to herself as she moved over to her laptop to take a listen. Sure, she felt a little guilty, but she wanted to see the results of Naruto's musical dedication. Rias blushed, looking sheepish. Up in the realm of the angels, two siblings were currently conversing over something of major importance. Michael, is it really such a big deal? A beautiful blonde woman asked the current leader of heaven. Just because they were sealed away doesn't mean that their container will continue where they left off. Michael and Gabriel shared a look. They had a feeling they weren't going to like this, and who were the sealed away their counterparts were referring to? Michael looked unsure, a worried frown on his face as he remembered the 6 siblings that the Heavenly Father ordered him to seal away into a sacred gear. Huh, you sealed away the souls of living beings? Under orders. Michael protested in Heaven's defense. Why? What could possibly have been a reason to do something that drastic? I mean, I didn't like when that happened to Drake and Albion, but the 2 heavenly dragons teamed up against all 3 factions, so the devils, angels, and fallen angels were forced to all work together to stop them, so I at least understand. But what was the reason for this? Azazel frowned. Easy people overreact to things they don't understand. And that overreaction leads to people getting hurt, sent away, or labeled evil. Why were you given orders like that? What were the reasons? Naruto said, though he could feel it was upsetting. The tailed beasts were his friends, after all. They haven't shown up since they were sealed, and now their energy signature is coming from Ko in Japan. The devils could influence the wielder into striking us. At that, the book was lowered as the devils all glared at the suddenly nervous, non-fallen Angelus present. Good to know you trust us so much. Surzek growled, his hands balling into fists. Gabriel looked downcast at that. Brother, we can't assume that the devils are so eager to start war once again. They had their own civil war to remove their old leaders, after all. And the new leaders want to foster peace as much as we do. Thank you? The devils all said to Gabriel at that. Well, guess we know where all old man put all the brains and common sense in regards to you too. Azazel snarled. I know, sister, but I can't help but be cautious. That sacred gear and those sisters, they could easily match a Longinus if they trained their container well enough. Huh! The members of the 3 factions all cried at that. A sacred gear like that? Okay, no wonder Michael's other is so jumpy. A regular sacred gear that can match a Longinus? Tell me that wouldn't be bad in the wrong hands. Especially if it was silent, since its creation, and suddenly acted up. Azazel shuddered. Ophis, however, rose a brow. Someone with a sacred gear that powerful, how interesting. And a potential ally against Great Red. Her other had some recruiting to attend to, it seemed. I still think you're being overly paranoid about this, Gabriel insisted. Stupidly overly paranoid, you mean? This idiot wants to restart the great biblical 3-way war because of feeling jumpy? Being worried about that powerful a sacred gear, I understand, but none of the 3 factions are in the shape to have another one of those. We're still trying to recover from the brink of extinction when that war happened before the dawn of mankind. The fallen angel groaned in sheer frustration. If it makes you feel any better, I'll go down to Ko when Zenobia and Irina head there in a few weeks. Will that ease your worries? Hooray! We're getting Lady Gabriel to go with us. Oh, that'll be a relief. It'll certainly make dealing with Kokabeel easier. Irina cheered. Zenobia, however, had a sense of dread at that. Then as her eyes landed on Isa, she recalled how the first meeting with the Occult Research Club had gone, and yanked her old friend by the collar of her shirt, and whispered in Irina's ear. As the blue-haired girl whispered her message, the color completely drained from Irina's face. Oh no, slightly, he conceded. However, I would like you to take a close look at the wielder, and come to your own conclusion about if they will be a problem. Seraphal scowled. Gabriel going to Ko? Being around her sweet little sister Sona? Oh, her other was not going to like that at all. Brother, she began, a rare frown on her face. Gabriel, please, Michael cut off, making her go silent. I don't like feeling this uneasy, and I need to make sure that our people will be safe, especially since Father has passed. Wait, what? God's dead? Naruto yelped. In that universe, might not be that way in this one. Michael said, feeling sick inside, as he always did when needing to cover up what happened to his father and leader. Well, okay then. Non-religious myself, but the idea of that is reassuring all the same. Oh? Care explaining that, Naruto? Gabriel asked. Naruto shrugged. All due respect and not to offend anyone, but I personally feel the world needs people with good hearts more than it does deities, is all. As long as your heart's good and you're good to others, that's what matters. The female seraph smiled. She found that refreshing. So Naruto believed in good for the sake of good. She would need to remember that. He certainly was interesting as far as Gabriel saw things. Both seraphs looked down at that, giving a silent prayer for their fallen creator. After a moment of silence, Gabriel stared at her brother with her frown still in place before she relented with a sigh. Very well then. I do this under protest though. The pout she gave at the end made Michael smile, its warmth making his sister slowly smile in return. With the plan decided, the female seraph left her brother's office so he could resume his work. Okay, it goes back to following Naruto after this. Seraphal said before she resumed reading. After his shift, Naruto was seen in a separate dimension with the Occult Research Club. It was created by the Gremry family so that they may safely train their peerage and any overly destructive techniques or powers they have at their disposal. The realm had been modified to look like an open field with some trees and ruined buildings. Naruto and Kushina nodded. They could easily understand the sense in that. Rias had Kiba and Kaneko work on Issei and Asia's physical training while she and Akino would see if Naruto had a sacred gear or something else that had been gifted to him by his blood. Naruto looked interested. The peerage had been upfront with Naruto about what they could do, even telling him some facts that were a bit personal. One of those facts was how Kaneko was a yokai who had been reincarnated into Rias's rook. She was a rare form of the Nikomata race that were called Nikosho, one of the last two alive. What? Naruto yelped, horrified at that last part, last two alive. At the grim, unwanted reminder of that, Kaneko snuggled deeper into Naruto's chest, trying to bury how much that fact hurt in the soothing warmth of his chakra to help her calm down. Hearing this, Naruto gave them his thanks for their trust before he returned the favor, informing them of his siren blood. At first, they were confused as to how a siren, even if he was only one partially, could be mute, Issei going so far as to ask, albeit tactlessly. Sorry. Issei cried at that. No harm done, didn't know. Naruto assured the pawn. They would never forget the grief his false smile held when he wrote down the reason his mutism. It was after the reveal that Rias sent the others away, hoping to let Naruto compose himself while Issei thought about his less than stellar question. Okay, Naruto, Rias began, getting his attention. I'd like you to show us if there is something you could do. An evil piece is meant to bring out someone's potential, and I need to know if you already had an ability or gift that you could use before I made you a temporary devil. Need to be sure if the temporary piece can do the same or not with how the evil pieces coax out potential when it's used on someone. Gotta remember to test that. Ajuka muttered. What he wouldn't give to take notes on this. It was infuriating that he couldn't. He nodded in understanding, motioning them to stand back and give him some space. Once they complied, he closed his eyes to focus, reaching down for the power he had trained with for many years. 2. He opened his eyes with a confused expression, looking around for the source of the strange voice. His actions concerned Rias and Akino, but they stood their ground off to the side. Focusing again, Naruto called upon his power and thrust his arm forward, fingers open and outstretched. From his hand, a gust of wind was launched, and its power pushed against the tree in its path, knocking over many loose leaves and breaking weak branches. The others nodded. Air-based abilities interesting, Surzak said. While Rias and Akino watched on with interest, Naruto frowned when the voice spoke up again. Now are you two? Naruto asked. Most likely what animates the sacred gear he could have, Azazel said. His frown deepened as the voice seemed to whisper softly into his ear. Who are you? He thought to himself. We wait for you, the voice answered, much to his surprise. Wait, we? Rias wondered. He would have mentally asked another question, but Rias broke him away from his thoughts. So, you can control wine to an extent. Can you do anything else with it? Well, based off of that training scene he was doing in the last chapter, Rosweiss said, feeling what the next demonstration would be. Putting his thoughts on the mysterious voice aside for now, he nodded and raised his hand. The fingers were pressed together in a knife hand fashion, and wind started to swirl around them. With a swipe, he sent a sharp blade of wind outwards, creating a trench in the ground and cutting cleanly through the tree he had targeted before. Vacuum blades? Nasty getting cut by those. The former Valkyrie nodded. Akino began, licking her lips. Impressive control, Uzumaki-kun. He turned bashful at the praise, scratching the back of his head with slightly flushed cheeks. And marked. Akino giggled maniacally, rubbing her hands together. Seemed she'd have fun with Naruto, or well, at least her other would. Part of her couldn't wait to play with him. Anything else? Rias asked, prompting him to write out a response. I can use the wind to sense my surroundings. When someone moves, it disturbs the air and I can feel it happening. It's like a sonar that is wind-based. Everyone gaped at that. Impressive idea. Very resourceful. Rosweiss praised, snapping out of it first a smile at Naruto. That caught both of their interest. Let's test that, Rias prompted. Close your eyes and try to locate Akino as she moves around. Akino eyed Naruto, licking her lips. Oh, Rias just made this easy. Time to have some fun. Nodding, he closed his eyes and took a relaxed stance, missing how the air shifted around him. Rias and Akino saw and felt the shift, turning to watch how far the shifts traveled. When they finally stopped, Rias estimated the distance to be a little over 15 meters, roughly around 50 feet. Not a bad range, she mused before nodding to Akino. Agreed about the range, Zenobia said. The queen brought out her wings and took to the sky, and Naruto raised a hand with a finger pointed after her. She moved around the sky, doing sharp turns and reversals of direction, but he kept up with her the whole time. A smirk came to her face, and she darted down to the ground at high speed. She changed her trajectory to aim directly at him from ground level, noticing his brows furrow. Akino smiled. Hit or miss, she was enjoying this. His eyes shot open and he rolled to the side, avoiding her flying tackle as she lifted herself back into the air above him. He stopped his roll, taking a knee on the ground while giving her an annoyed look. Why in the world would you? No, what? Not even gonna ask, Naruto said to the Priestess of Thunder. I couldn't resist, she defended, giggling demurely as if she did nothing wrong. Was only playing with you, Naruto, Akino said, causing him to roll his eyes. Dryly, Naruto held up his notepad with a single word written on it, sadist. Uzumaki-kun has figured me out so easily, she praised in a teasing tone, giggling once more, this time with a slight blush. Naruto looked freaked. Just great, this girl reminds me of Anko so much. From her body and that freaky lip-licking thing. I can practically smell her sense of arousal. Just hope she doesn't have a thing for the taste of my blood, he muttered. Oh? That's a great idea, Naruto. Thanks. I bet yours will be a scrumptious little taste test. Akino cheered in delight, making him go pale at that she'd heard him. You just had to give her ideas, didn't you? Kiba said with a haunted look. I didn't mean to give her ideas. Not my fault, she's too much like someone I know who does that. The Uzumaki told his fellow blonde. She's the ultimate sadist, actually, Rias informed Naruto, looking amused when he aimed his dry expression at her. Anyway, that sensory of yours is useful. If you could sense something coming, you could be better prepared for it. I bet that's how you knew I was approaching you the other day, huh? He scratched his whiskered cheek sheepishly, looking guilty. So that's a yes. Kushina nodded. Anyway, I'll have Akino help you with refining your wind later. For now, I want to see if you have something called a sacred gear. He tilted his head questioningly. That gauntlet Issei has is an example. I felt a power coming from just below your neck, and I'm wondering if it's a sacred gear or just your latent siren power. Naruto frowned. He was wondering that about his other self, too. He frowned thoughtfully, unsure of what it could be. A siren drew power from their voice, and he lost his as a baby. It wouldn't make sense for him to have that power still within him. Deciding to get answers, he sat down on the ground and crossed his legs. Pressing his fists together on his lap, he closed his eyes and concentrated, searching within himself for anything other than his wind powers. Once again, the voice from before called to him, but they sounded further away than before. He frowned in his meditation before he focused entirely on the voice. Within his mind's eye, he saw a brilliant flash before he blacked out. Please tell me that's normal with this, Naruto said. Naruto! Rias called out in concern, seeing the blonde suddenly fall forward and land face first on the ground. She and Akino rushed over to him, trying to rouse him, but he wouldn't respond. The first thing Naruto registered when his senses returned to him was the sound of women singing. Slowly, his eyes opened and he saw flower petals floating around in a calm breeze, as if they danced to the somber song that was being sung. He roused himself to a sitting position, looking around to see a void decorated in pinkish-red lights similar to the northern lights. There were also dozens of green trees that were covered in blooming flowers. Flowers that held white petals and pink cores. That place is beautiful, Asia said. Getting to his feet, he focused his hearing on the melodious singing, walking to where he felt it was originating from. Walking past a seemingly limitless number of trees, his blue eyes admired the endless petals that floated around him. A serene smile formed on his lips, and he basked in the peaceful atmosphere that this void held. Walking over a small hill, he saw a stone altar with 6 women standing in a circle, all of them singing in perfect harmony. In the center of the altar was a massive stalk that had a city-sized flower that was in full bloom, the entire thing the same color of the trees and their flowers. Anyone else getting a bad feeling from that city-sized flower for some reason? Surzak asked. The others in the reading group all nodded, shuddering. Ophis narrowed her eyes. That flower. Issei winced as his right hand suddenly flared with pain and a glowing green oval appeared on it. This pain felt as bad as when he'd combined Drake's power with a fragment of Albion scale male armor to create the vanishing gear. Why was Drake getting so worked up? He walked up the steps and found a piece of rubble to sit on, happily spectating their performance, as he took in their features. The first woman was tall and had a figure that rivaled Rias and Akino. She had long and flowing blonde hair, amber eyes, and wore clothes that left very little to the imagination. On her forehead was the Roman numeral of the number 5. Seeing the woman in question, Issei's eyes bulged and his jaw dropped. An H-cup an actual she's a freaking oh dear god look, but don't touch has never been this cruel. It ain't right, it ain't fair. Azazel pat the boy on the back. I know, Issei, I know the old man always was a prudish who couldn't understand. Stay strong. The fallen angel wept. Kushina rolled her eyes. Oh, just great. There were 2. The next woman had brown hair tied in twin pigtails and blue eyes. She was dressed more moderately than the first, and had an air of self-dignity. On her forehead was the number 4. Kinda old-fashioned, but seems nice, I guess. Irina shrugged. Third was a woman with purple hair that was cut straight. Her eyes were a similar shade to her hair, and she wore comfortable clothes with a buckler-styled shield on her left arm. Clipped to her belt were 2 pairs of scissors, and her forehead held the number 3. She's spooky, Gasper gulped. The old-fashioned black iron scissors didn't exactly help with that either in the cross-dressing vampire's opinion. The next had short and curly blue hair and matching eyes. Her clothes consisted of a bikini top, a skirt, and some stockings, while a black flower with a blue core rested in her blue locks. On her forehead was the number 2. Looks pleasant enough, but she needs to cover up a bit more. Gabriel said thoughtfully. Fifth in line had pale blonde hair in a bobbed style with a black headband holding back the thicker strands. Her eyes were wine red and she wore white clothes that looked modest and styled like cathedral clothes. Decorating those clothes were some armored gloves and a circle-shaped weapon that was strapped to her back. The number 1 was on her forehead. Seems the orderly type, Azazel said. And what was with the huge chakram she had? Finally, there was a woman with white hair and reddish-pink eyes. She wore pristine white clothes with black heels, and had a prosthetic left arm with clawed fingers. Her forehead was bare, which confused Naruto since he thought there was a theme going on. Akino blinked, staring at the one without a number as the images were shown in the reflecting pool. Something tells me my other might really learn to like her for some reason. When they finished their song, they all turned to him. This prompted him to stand up, his hands clapping in appreciation for their harmony. The women with 5 and 4 smiled at his actions while the others remained stoic, more so than Kaneko. Whoa, that's pretty stoic. No offense, Kaneko, Kiba said. None taken. The cat girl replied. The one without a number beckoned him forward, and he complied without question, standing before the 6 of them. Welcome, Naruto, she greeted calmly, surprising him. Yes, I was the one who called you and brought you here. We've waited 17 years to speak with you, though I had hoped you would be able to return the sentiment. Whoa! Low blow! Azazel cried. He cringed at that, looking down sadly. Sister! For admonished, her expression stern. That was uncalled for. I agree. Kushina frowned. If he gets like this every time it's brought up, then there's more work to be done than I thought, she replied easily. It happened at his birth, and he's coped without a voice for his entire life. He should be over it by now. He looked up and frowned at her, his blue orbs blazing. This only made her smirk. So your name is justified. Good. I was worried you'd be too soft. Wait, oh. She was just testing him by rubbing a sore spot, Kushina said, loosing her frown as she realized that. One sighed and stepped forward. We're wasting time. He needs to be told who we are and why he's here. Explain, please. Naruto requested. Mao, you're always so serious, complained 5, a pout on her face as she crossed her arms, perking up her impressive bosom. Her pout became a smirk when Naruto blushed and avoided looking at her. And you're annoyingly cheery, 3 drawled out, cutting some split ends with her scissors. Naruto felt out of place during their sisterly squabble. He raised his arm to get their attention, something 2 noticed. Getting back on track, we're all within what is called a soul's cape, Naruto-kun. He raised a brow in curiosity, prompting 4 to continue. A soul's cape is deep within your subconscious, in the deepest recesses of your soul and any hidden power within. It is where your siren powers rest, and where our sacred gear has awakened. Wait, a sacred gear that was used to seal away 6 sisters, Surzek said, eyes widening. You don't think? Ajuka started to say. Looks that way. Cute, fun to tease, and powerful enough to make heaven piss themselves? Seraphal looked over at Naruto as if he was an item being appraised at an auction. Dibs, she cheered. No way. I got him first. Naruto's mine. Rias snapped, glaring. Unseen by everyone else, both of Rias' rooks scowled at them for declaring who had the rights to having Naruto. He perked up at that, turning to the others as they nodded in confirmation. The 6 of us, 1 picked up, all make up this sacred gear, Naruto. But we weren't always here. We used to have flesh and blood bodies and had hundreds of followers, 3 continued, satisfied with her hair management for now. We're known as intoners, goddesses with the power of song. Intoners? What that means, 1 pressed forward, is that our songs give others strength, and they empower our demons, personal companions that are linked to us spiritually. Demons? No. It's spelled D-M-O-N-S, Seraphal said, looking at the page. However, 5 continued, her pout returning, some stuck-up guy with angel wings sealed us away with the help of someone he called father. They targeted us individually, and erased our faith from history. Now, nobody knows about the Intoner faith, about us. At that, the book was lowered. Everyone looking at Michael, who looked stunned himself. Wait, no way, this is this place we're in, it's the cathedral for the Intoners? Rosweiss cried. Then heaven were the ones who did all this. Asia cried, tearing up. The horror she had felt at the state of the undoubtedly once beautiful temple renewed and grew worse. We can't be sure of that. After all, show me a cause, I'll show you a fanatic, Rosweiss said satirically. There are those who won people over by peaceful and gradual methods that slowly incorporated both ideals together so people could get used to them, even allowing those who continued to follow the old ways out of respect for the fact that it wasn't just a form of worship, it was a part of their culture and way of life. And there are those that preformed forced conversions. Disgusting, she shuddered. With his being right next to her, Naruto reached out and took Rosweiss' hand, giving it a comforting squeeze at that. Michael and Gabriel shuddered. They held forced conversions, and those that preformed them in utter loathing. He regarded them sadly, feeling sympathy for them losing so much. A kinship was felt between himself and the 6 of them, one of loss and pain. I can't stand things like that. Painful, Kiba muttered solemnly. The unmarked one, he would refer to her as Zero, finally spoke up again. Once they sealed us away, they changed our prison to the sacred gear that was born within you, and that sacred gear, now they all spoke as one, is the Gale Symphony. What? No way. Azazel yelped. The title of the book? That's not a sacred gear we have here. Surzek said. Dude. Issei cried, whipping to face Naruto so fast it seemed that rather than his neck, he'd break his spine in 2 and end up in pieces. You get a sacred gear with a built-in hot chick 6-pack harem? What the hell is this bullshit? Share the wealth, man. They're with my other, not me. So you won't get anything out of getting on my case just because you're horny as a castrated, virginal incubus, Issei. Naruto smirked cheekily. At that, everyone else besides Naruto and Issei froze, covering their mouths, then they started chuckling or giggling, which quickly erupted into uproarious laughter, most crying or holding their stomachs in an attempt to gather some much-needed breath while literally rolling on the floor, holding their sides in laughter. Era. Akino blushed. He's got you there, Issei. It took a full 6 hours straight for everyone to regain control of themselves. Good one, Uzumaki. I needed that. Thanks. What makes it especially funny is it's true. Kiba snickered. Issei pouted. As much as he hated being the butt of that joke, he knew he couldn't deny it. Still taking deep breaths to compose herself, Seraphol resumed reading. As soon as they declared the title, the wind picked up and made the petals dance wildly. The title also resonated inside of Naruto, making him feel a strange sense of pride, but also a sense of sadness. You felt it, didn't you? Zero asked, making him nod. Our souls have been linked, and they have been since you drew your first breath. You, Naruto, are the last link to our diminished faith, the last one to bear our power. How can that be? Sacred gears pass from one bearer to the next. Michael frowned. Unless the siren version of Naruto is the only one who could handle their power. Would explain why a sacred gear like that kept dormant. Gabriel told her brother. However, for Kutin, that power has changed, evolved in a way. You see, our power is song. But your power, she smiled to him and finished, your power goes beyond song. It is the wind, the natural power that carries our voices and reaches all over the world. It is why we have Gale in our name, Wo Naruto muttered. He looked unsure of everything, not knowing how to respond and wishing he could speak. No fooling, no doubt there's a lot of questions, Rias said. Five noticed he was uncomfortable, and she stepped forward to place a hand on his shoulder. His blue eyes met her amber, and she gave him a smile to comfort him. We're standing with you, Naruto-kun. That's what you need to understand. All of us, for continued, stepping forward as well. We are your symphony, and you, three spoke up, stepping forward, are our Gale. Two smiled and moved over to him, her hand covering Four's on his other shoulder. We're all in this together. We will help you grow stronger, one continued. Strong enough to show that we are not forgotten, that we still exist inside of you. But most importantly, Zero concluded, moving closer and standing directly in front of him with her hand pressed over his heart, we will be your voice. You will be our body, all for one, and one for all, he mouthed, a tearful smile on his face. He felt it from the hands they placed on him, the link they shared. The bond that resonated between all of their souls. Asia sighed. All that was a beautiful moment. Stepping back, he stuck out his hand with the palm down, his smile growing into a bright grin that dared to challenge the sun's luster. You really do have that bright a smile, son. Kushina smiled. Get it from my folks. He supplied. One by one, the Intonas smiled back at him and placed their hands over his own, 5 through 0 in perfect order. Once Zero had her hand placed, Naruto placed his other hand on hers, and the 6 women stilled as they felt their hearts pulse in perfect harmony. Slowly, Naruto began to fade away from the soul's cape, his peaceful face being the last part of him to disappear. Once he was gone, Zero turned to her sisters and smirked. We chose well, was all she said, earning agreeing nods from the other Intonas. Couldn't agree more. Kushina muttered. They all then moved over to the giant flower, placing their hands on the stalk and sending their power through it. The bloom at the top gained a green aura, drops of pure light raining from its petals and washing over them. They would stand with him, just as he would stand for them. I could learn to like those 6, Kushina said, Rias nodding and feeling likewise. When Naruto came to, he sat up slowly and saw that the wind was raging around him. Strangely, everything had a green coloration to it, and he felt like his ears were covered by muffs or pads. Let us see it, Gasper said. Getting to his feet, he saw the winds slowly die down until they faded away, letting the others approach him safely. Naruto, Rias called as she and the others rushed over to him. Her eyes widened when she saw something new about him, gasping out, Sacred Gear, you do have one. Come on. What's this Gale Symphony Sacred Gear looks like? Azazel smirked. All he did was grin with pride, his green eyes regarding them all happily before they faded back to blue. Azazel blinked at Seraphol, then pouted when she explained the page break that was indicative of the next scene. Boo. I want a visual of the kid's gear. It'll probably show it later, relax. Surzek said. A couple of days passed after Naruto awakened the Gale Symphony and met the Intonas. Turns out, the titles he gave them were correct since they each were named after the number they bore. While they were okay with their names, Naruto felt that being called by a number was an insult to what they used to be. I can understand that, Naruto said, recalling the tailed beasts and how they were called by the number of tails they had, not their actual names. Well, Shikaka was called by his, so maybe the others just didn't tell anyone their names. If they were really goddesses that had been sealed away, then they needed actual names, not numerical titles. Very true, Irina said. He promised them to give them names when he thought of them, something that warmed their hearts as he proved, once again, that they had chosen well. Zenobia nodded with a smile. Naruto was a compassionate person, and compassion was an endearing quality. Currently, Naruto was rushing back to Koa Academy, still dressed in his ramen stand uniform, complete with stained apron. Rias had told him that there would be a meeting today between herself and someone important, though, she looked spiteful at referring to the person in that manner. Whoever it was that Rias was going to speak with, they were not someone she liked, that much was obvious. Oh gee, I can only wonder at the identity of this person, Rias drawled with nearly tangible levels of sarcasm. Rushing through the entrance to the school grounds, he unconsciously used his sacred gear to have the wind blow at his back, increasing his speed so that he almost blurred to the door. Pushing it open with his momentum, he stumbled slightly as he entered the clubroom before he righted himself, looking embarrassed at his entrance, and giving Rias an apologetic look. No need. You were busy, Rias assured Naruto. He then took note of the two new people that he had never seen before. The first was a woman with silver hair and eyes, dressed in a stereotypical maid's uniform that strangely looked great on her. He hoped that Jiraiya's perverted tendencies hadn't somehow rubbed off on him before his death, because he felt that his thoughts would be something the super pervert would think. Watch it, Naruto. That's my wife. Sasuke frowned. Naruto gulped. The other person was seated on the same couch as Rias. Something Naruto noticed made her tense and annoyed. That alone made Naruto deduce that the blonde man was the person Rias was meant to speak with. He wore a burgundy blazer and matching pants with a white shirt that wasn't buttoned up all the way. Just looking at the guy made Naruto feel a sense of ire, for the man regarded him with disinterest and a slight sneer. Rias' expression twisted into one of utter disgust at Riser. Who is this human who thinks he can barge in on this meeting? He asked in annoyance. That is my newest club member, Rias answered calmly. He's testing out a temporary evil piece that Lord Beelzebub made for me, and I can tell my other is gonna hate him already, Naruto muttered. Rias looked pleased at that. Ah, he replied, his expression once again taking on little interest. I remember father telling me that Lord Lucifer finally contributed to your little rebel streak. But honestly, this was what you wasted a prototype piece on. A lowly human who looks like he works in the slums. Kushina scowled, not liking the insult to her son, even if the version of him in the story wasn't actually hers. Naruto bristled silently, and he felt the intoner's growing ire from within him. Who the hell is this jackass? Issei growled out, having come to see Naruto as a cool guy during the few days he had spent with Rias' peerage. Alongside him, the other peerage members also held small frowns at the insult to their companion. Someone going out of their way to be an asshole to a friend, yeah, we'd be pissed. Issei frowned, the rest of the Occult Research Club nodding in agreement. Seated next to Lady Rias is Lord Riser of House Phoenix, informed Grafia calmly. He is Lady Rias' fiancé due to a contract between the Gremory and Phoenix houses, Sasuke growled. When he'd originally agreed to the marriage contract, Rias had been just a baby. He hadn't gotten to know the girl that he would grow to love more than almost anything else in the world. His focus wasn't on her betterment, but on the betterment of the clan. It was a line of thinking that he regretted ever having. If he had known just how much his sister would mean to him, he would have never gone through with it. If he had known Riser's true nature, that of an obnoxious, self-centered, perverted asshole who was only planning to use Rias as a trophy to boost his status in the underworld and as a toy to satisfy his sexual wants, he would have said fuck the clan and ripped up the paper as soon as it touched his desk. Unfortunately, he hadn't done that, and now had to live with the guilt of knowing he almost doomed his little sister to an eternity with Riser Phoenix. In his guilt, he had managed to negotiate a rating game between the two in an attempt to at least give the girl a fighting chance. But even he knew that that was nowhere near enough to appease for his mistakes. Thank God Issei had rescued his little sister from an eternity of being Rias Phoenix. Oh! Sasuke hissed, feeling as though a knife had been shoved through his head. Michael looked at his counterpart. You were at least thinking of something towards my father? Just thankful my sister's free of the prick, Sasuke said, Michael nodding at that. Riser smirked at the introduction, his face showing one of superiority to the others. Issei and Naruto, specifically. Then, the man flexed his power and called forth a large magic circle with his family crest on it. From that circle came a group of women who stood behind Riser obediently while one of them took a seat on the couch beside him. Issei still hates him so much. Issei hissed. He had no trouble recalling when he'd learned Riser's peerage doubled as his harem. Baster had flaunted that in Issei's face just to taunt him. And those women are his peerage, Grafia continued before gesturing to the girl who sat down. Along with his younger sister, Lady Revel Phoenix. Sister? Naruto repeated, why is she there? You'll find out later, Rias said, feeling sorry for Revel. She didn't want to expose Riser had used the peerage system to turn her into his servant. So, Riser cut in as soon as the introductions were finished. Where was this pitiful waste anyway? I would have thought that a servant of my Rias would have been more punctual. Kushina's hands balled themselves into clenched fists. Irritably, Naruto gestured to his stained uniform before reaching into his pocket and pulling out a flyer with the Gremory crest on it. He then slammed it on the table in front of everyone, glaring at Riser. Work clothes and the fact that devils use those summoning contract flyers to head to where they're summoned when they're called upon for something like doing a job anyone can figure out what that means for something. Ajuka nodded. Ah, Grafia spoke up, I see. You were late and are in such a state due to fulfilling your obligations. Not one to shirk your responsibilities for any reason. The maid nodded, her tone showing a slight approval towards his actions. She would approve of someone like that. Both Gremory's siblings said in unison. Ha! He's just a mere scullion. How pathetic. Truly my Rias, Riser is shocked and disappointed that such a pathetic dreg is one of your servants, Riser said, addressing himself in the third person. Why that lousy? Kushina snarled as everyone else scowled at Riser's image in the water. I failed to see his commitment to his duties as something to scoff at, Riser-sama, the silver-haired maid said, eyes narrowed dangerously. He fulfilled his task and rushed right back here immediately afterwards. I was unaware the House of Phoenix looked down on those who take their obligations seriously. Oh shit, Riser just put his family on my wife's shit list on sheer principle. That's not gonna end well, Surzek muttered, cringing. Rias winced, knowing that her elder sister-in-law Graphia, someone born to the House of Lucifuge, a noble family of pure-blooded devils from the extra demons who were proud of their commitments and loyalties, would take any negative comments against a hard worker. Personally, their pride is their sense of commitment, so they respect those that are committed and work hard. I can see them getting along great with Guy and Lee. Naruto nodded. Riser gulped, and so did Ravel, both Phoenix members feeling the tense atmosphere. The rest of the unfamiliar girls glared at the maid, but she turned to them and merely rose a brow. That small gesture was all it took, and they shrank away from her, dropping their glares and cowering. I like this woman. Kushina nodded. Naruto blinked. Who was this woman dressed like a maid, and why were these people so afraid of her? My apologies for the display and the lack of consideration, she said, speaking to Naruto. Had I known of any prior duties, I would have seen this meeting occur later. Graphia then turned and bowed slightly to Naruto while also giving him a minute smile. It pleased her to see Rias's probationary piece was dedicated to his employer and to Rias. Yeesh, safe saying she respects you. Rias smiled. It was a good thing, too. He blushed at her actions and nervously waved her off. He didn't mean to gather so much attention, and it wasn't this woman's fault he was late. Why Lord Lucifer finally contributed to your little rebel streak, and why Lord Beelzebub would waste such an important prototype piece on something as pathetic as this is beyond Riser, Riser said, still speaking in third person. Unless of course this miserable dreg is expendable. Which explains everything, actually. Riser's even betting that his parents were low-born trash like he is, scraping just to get by and then dying pathetically in some matter. He gave a condescending smirk and chuckle as Naruto trembled in pure rage. Such is the sad, pathetic lives of these lowly creatures. What did he just say? Everyone other than Ophis roared, their bodies all enveloped in their respective types of energy, as their anger got the better of them at the Phoenix's attitude and remarks. Annoyed at the others around her, Ophis' body gave off a dark violet glow that began to encompass the entire cathedral and caught everyone's attention. The power surrounding her once small form began to grow and expand, quickly towering over the others before it took shape and form. Once the glow of power died down, her dragon form was revealed to the readers, taking the visage of a serpentine creature that was close to 100 meters long and had the wings of an European-style dragon, with rows of midnight black and dark violet scales. The ridges of her spinal scales resembled jagged peaks, moving from each of her foreheads to the base of her tail. The foreheads all had serpentine necks that stretched over 20 feet from the main body and gave off magma-orange glows from their throats. The eyes held no pupils whatsoever, simply taking the appearance of gray voids that regarded everything in sight with dismissal. Framing each head were pairs of bladed protrusions that stretched backwards while the fangs looked sharp enough to tear into everything, whether it be physical, magical, or even spectral, as its gazes went from person to person before all the heads settled on Naruto. Quiet! The dragoness roared, the sheer force of the roar knocking everyone down. Okay, sheesh, can't even have a justified moment of anger over an insult to those dear to you around you. Naruto frowned at Ophis as he got up. I do understand that, Azura. And while I'm pleased to see you haven't changed even through your lifetimes, there is a time and place for such things. Her piece said, she returned to human form, and the group went back to reading. Within the Gale Symphony, the intoners heard Riser's insult to their host's family. Needless to say, they weren't pleased. Rossweiss gave Naruto's shoulder a squeeze. What did that bastard just say? 2 yelled out furiously. Kaneko cracked her knuckles in growing anger. He just said his last words. Why, that little shit! 3 added, gripping her scissors dangerously tight. How dare he say such things? Issei paled at the grip 3 had on her scissors, absently covering his privates for safety. Safe to say she's pissed, 4 trembled in anger, her normally composed nature unable to stay strong. He's a dead man. Gabriel took several deep breaths to hold back her own anger. I like to see the best in people, but his words about another person's family are just too cruel to overlook. Second comes the death. But first comes exposing he has that many girls with him to try making up for his subatomic-sized. 5 promised, her amber eyes flashing dangerously. Hello? So his harem was to overcompensate for how he had no balls? Nice one. Azazel laughed. Oh, 1 began, cracking her armored knuckles, it's going to be a pleasure ripping his head out of his ass. No wonder that Gremry girl doesn't want to marry him. I don't blame her. My thanks for supporting that. As for Riser's head being torn off after being pulled out through his ass, that's something I'd actually like seeing. Rias smirked wickedly. Zero was silent as her sisters raged, stewing over the insult to her chosen vessel. Say something, damn it! Seraphal growled out. Of all the death and suffering ever caused with our power, she began, her voice dangerously soft, Freeing that redhead from this fucking swine is one I am going to treasure inflicting most. Rias and her friends all smiled at that, all but Asia feeling a sense of vindication from Zero's comment. I sincerely hope that this House of Phoenix doesn't mind losing an heir, because this son of a bitch just crossed the line by insulting Naruto's family. That might cause a stir, Surzex pointed out with a frown, mentally hoping that there wouldn't be any sort of backlash. Sure, he'd understand why the Antonas would kill Riser, which the red-haired devil agreed would be deserved. He may have the title of Lucifer, but he was still a Gremry, so he was family-oriented to the very core, first and foremost, just like every other last member of that family of devils. But the politics, death and suffering? Okay, we need to hear the backstory for the Antonas. Irina yelped at that. If their power was used malevolently, it would explain why Father was out to overthrow them. Michael said. We don't know that for sure yet. We need to learn their backstory, about them, their powers and how they used them before we can make any judgments. Might have been due to good intentions gone wrong, after all. Gabriel pointed out. She then gave a grin brimming with bloodlust that demanded to be nourished. Akino's cheeks flushed at that grin, her inner masochist alerting her to a fellow sadist. So she was right before about that feeling she had. Oh, she just knew she and her other were going to like Zero. It was a look her sisters had seen before they were all sealed away, a look that still sent chills down their spines. Talk about putting the fear of God into people, Azazel noted, earning a dull look from Michael. What? They were the living icons of their faith. Technically, they're goddesses. I actually feel somewhat indebted to those feathered, sanctimonious cocksuckers that ruined everything when it was supposed to be over, she continued, referring to the angels that sealed them into the Gale Symphony. Michael, Gabriel, and Irina all sputtered and blushed at the insult to the angels. It didn't help that Azazel was on the floor busting his gut in laughter. Ruined everything when it was supposed to be over? Ajuka repeated, brows furrowed. What is that supposed to mean? If it weren't for them sticking us in here, we wouldn't be getting to butcher this pompous child and his group of sluts. Make it hurt, Zero, Kushina growled out, taking the insult to her other self personally. After all, it was an insult to her child's family. Regardless if this was the Naruto she personally birthed or not, she still felt that righteous motherly wrath. Shuddering as their rage echoed within his mind, Naruto put a hand to his head as it started throbbing. Oh good, they were pissed. You can just feel the sarcasm oozing from that last part. Issei snickered. If those Antonas were really so powerful, Riser was utterly screwed. While he could do without the headache, it was still nice to know that his new partners cared so much about him. My thanks for that. Kushina said, grateful for the Antona's care for the alternate version on her son. Rias bolted to her feet and rounded on her would-be fiancé. Riser! How dare you! She snarled as her eyes glowed red and black energy with a red outline danced around her dangerously. She could try tolerating Riser being an arrogant womanizer, for she had known he was for many years, now, but insulting her peerage, even if Naruto wasn't a fully accepted member, was going too far for her to forgive. Worse still, it was an insult aimed at a friend's deceased family. Rias and Surzek both seethed at that. Oh boy, insult a person's sense of commitment, get the Lucifuge pissed off, insult their family, get the Gremry pissed off. Riser just loves burying bridges, doesn't he? Seraphal scowled, pausing in her reading. The third son of the Phoenix clan merely stood up with his condescending smirk, and grabbed Rias by her chin. You will need that willful streak beaten out of you, my dear Rias, he said firmly, his tone turning dangerous. Bastard had better get his hands off of her. Naruto snarled. He was unprepared for a distortion in the air to appear around his arm before his hand was separated from his body, a clean cut through the wrist. Furious, he turned to glare at the one responsible, and saw it was the same low-born brat he had just insulted. Ha! Naruto snarked. Let me at him. Naruto was glaring at Riser, breathing hard like a winded bull. But what really surprised everyone was that his eyes were no longer blue. Instead, they were glowing green and wind was swirling around him. For a moment, Rias worried he might attack Riser, which wouldn't help the situation. True as that is, you do have the right, Rias said. However, he suddenly winced and grabbed his head, falling to a knee as he felt the Antonas start to bicker within his mind. Zero, stop! One yelled, her arms wrapped around the eldest sister. She tried to pull Zero away from the center stalk that represented the core of the Gale Symphony. What? They're stopping her? Whose side are they on? Issei cried. 1-0 started, growling as she spoke, if you know what's good for you, you'll dash. 0, please. Not like this. 4 urged as she helped 1 pull her away. You're willing to do whatever you must and cross any line you want in the name of obligation and responsibility. Okay, that warrants a need for explanation. What made her make the choice to where she did things that were like that? Michael frowned. 1 continued, as much as we are complete opposites, and as much as I considered you as a traitor to the Antonas, she paused briefly, getting Zero's attention. I understood and respected that about you and the reasons why you turned on us, even when you almost cut us all down back then. But this isn't the way and you know it. Wait, what? She's an attempted sororicide? Michael said. Said she had reasons that made it so she was willing to do whatever she had to and cross whatever line was necessary because of obligation and responsibility. What was drastic enough to make her want to kill her own sisters? Fact is, we don't know enough, need the full story before passing any judgments. Those were your words, after all, Zenobia said, but looked bothered as she pointed that out. He deserves punishment compounded in blood. Zero argued, her tone demanding retribution. And I mean gallons of it. Straight up, damn right, and amen, sing it sister. Kushina nodded firmly. And we agree. Two tried to reason. But not here, at least. Hello? Issei said. It's too private for his execution. Three supported, staring down her older sister. Agreed. Seraphal said, pausing in her reading. Wait for a more fitting moment, Five added, smirking deviously. When the time is right, we'll all help Naruto-kun put that child in his place, and knowing how this ends in a rating game, I can see that being perfect for their needs. Rias smiled. Zero went silent, contemplating everything her sister said. She finally relented, a smirk returning to her face. Finally, something we can all completely agree on, besides Naruto being the perfect container. And you all make a great point. This bastard peacock deserves to die before the eyes of all the world. I'll be patient for now, she promised, pulling back her power and influence. And I awfully like those intoners. Kushina smirked. Naruto gasped as Zero's influence on his mind retracted, but he kept his glare aimed at Rias's obviously unwanted fiancée. He wasn't going to forget a thing this bastard said or did for a long time, nor should he. Roswai scowled. How did you think I felt almost being married to the guy? Rias shuddered. Riser snarled response, even as he grabbed his arm and placed the ends of the injury together. A quick flash of fire came from them, healing the wound and reattaching his hand while flames erupted threateningly from his fingertips. Bit of Norse rune magic, specifically that of the Vanir could handle that, either that or the Skofnung's sword. Rosweiss mused, studying Riser's healing. Excuse me? Kushina asked. Oh sorry, was just thinking on ways to stop his recovery abilities. Rosweiss said, you see, the Norse gods are a pantheon of deities central to all accounts of Norse mythology. The principal pantheon of the Norse gods is the Aesir, whom are connected to power and conflict, while a second pantheon comprises the Vanir, whom are associated with cultivation and fertility. In Norse mythology, the two clans waged war against each other, ultimately resulting in the eventual unification of the two pantheons. So since Vanir are gods that have to deal with nature and things like it, you were wondering if anything from their branch could affect Riser's healing factor since it's attributed to an element like fire? Asia asked. Rosweiss nodded with a smile. Rias muttered a curse at that. Damn it! If that were true, it would have been useful. Sane devils don't know Norse magic then. Seraphal stated. Well, I would like to establish a Norse magic school in the Gremry territory, and start a business training new Valkyries out of female devils. Rosweiss admitted. At that, the four Satans all perked up. Well, now that's interesting. Devils are always interested in learning new magics. We'll deal with that later, Miss Rosweiss, Surzek said. What was that other thing you mentioned, the sword? Naruto asked. At the question, the Valkyrie turned devil shuddered. Skofnung, it was the sword of legendary Danish king Rolf Kraki. Known as the best of all swords that have been carried in northern lands, it was renowned for supernatural sharpness and hardness, as well as for being imbued with the spirits of the king's 12 faithful berserker bodyguards. A cut by the Skofnung sword spreads until it rips the person apart. The only way to stop this is by touching the cut with the Skofnung sword's wheatstone. Blade has a few drawbacks though. Balance things out. First of all, it can't be drawn in the presence of women. Second, it can't be drawn in daylight. Third, it can only be used by one of noble lineage. And lastly, once the blade is drawn, it cannot be sheathed again until it has drawn blood. Naruto whistled, damn. And most of those drawbacks can be fixed just by never sheathing the sword. Nasty, Rosweiss nodded. So those two things might cancel out Riser's healing. Rias mused thoughtfully. Speaking of that, shall we continue? Kushina voiced. Everyone nodded and turned their attention back to the story. Enough, a stern voice cut in, making all attention focus on the wife of Lucifer. This isn't why we're all gathered here, she declared, causing Riser to dispel his flames while Naruto's eyes faded back to blue and the wind ceased. After they both had their respective elements dissipate, Riser clicked his teeth in annoyance. Indeed, he agreed with Graphia, trying to save face. Such low-born trash is of no consequence, especially since my Rias and I need to prepare for our wedding. Rias glared at the man she was going to be forced to marry with undisguised disgust. I refuse. I have no intention of bringing my family to ruin, but I will not allow such insults against those that serve and aid me to stand unchallenged. That would dishonor my family in an even worse way. This pact between our houses was just proven a farce by that spiteful arrogance of yours, and I will not be part of it. Damn right, other me. Rias nodded. Surzek beamed. He felt so proud of his sister right now for that. So you mean to settle this dispute in a rating game, then, my beloved Rias? Riser questioned her with an arrogant smirk. Rating game? Naruto wondered. Kiba smiled. A competition between two devils with a peerage. Think of it as a special team battle. The game takes the form of a strategic battle between the king and their pieces. It's fought on a map of their choosing, and can be created to be a perfect replica of any location they desire. Only mature devils are allowed to participate in official rating games. The servants of the devils are named after the pieces of chess: rook, knight, queen, bishop, and pawn. Only devils with peerages can become the king piece. The maximum number of players in a raiding game is 16, and the players lose when their king loses. Naruto and Kushina nodded at the explanation. The redhead nodded firmly, her eyes blazing. Gladly. At her words, the phoenix laughed. Very well then. I'll accept this challenge, if only to show you how pointless your rebellious nature is. I'll even give you 10 days to prepare your peerage for the game. He then gave her a wicked grin, licking his lips hungrily. And when you lose, my beloved, you'll have to accept our marriage without complaint, over my dead body. Naruto snarled. He's getting really into this, Gasper muttered. He does have his reasons to be that upset with Riser, and Rias is proving to be a good friend to him. So why wouldn't the idea of Rias being made to marry Riser get him mad? Zenobia pointed out. With that, Riser gave Grafia a faint nod before he and his all-female peerage vanished in a magic circle bearing the Phoenix family crest. As soon as they were gone, Issei raged out. Who the hell does that fucker think he is? Indeed, Kiba agreed with a rare frown on his face. Such insults aimed at a member of our club, at a comrade, will not be taken lightly. Fried yakitori on the menu, Kaneko added, her brows furrowed even as she spoke stoically. Asia fiddled with her uniform before she moved over to her fellow blonde. Naruto-san, will you be okay? He turned to her and met her concerned green eyes with his angered blue. Seeing as it wouldn't be fair to give her such a look, he forced himself to calm down, and gave her a weak smile, nodding once. She didn't look convinced, but she accepted the nod and embraced him to show her support. Would it be weird if I said thanks and that I love you guys? Not to be creepy, but you're all such great friends that I can't help it. The whiskered blonde said. Not at all. The members of the Occult Research Club all smiled. Normally, Issei would have been rather jealous of such an act, but he knew that Naruto needed the support of his friends after hearing insults about his late family. So, he said nothing and just turned to Rias. 10 days to train. I say we get started right now, Bucho. Rias nodded with a faint smile. And we will. I just need to speak with Sona for a moment before we leave. She then turned back to Grafia and handed her a file that was on her desk. This is for Lord Beelzebub. It's what I've noticed so far about the probation piece he lent me. No doubt my other is looking forward to reviewing that, said Devil muttered. The maid took the file and stored it away in a pocket dimension before speaking to her husband's sibling. A word of advice, Lady Rias. Riser may have deplorable conduct and unwarranted pride. No shit. The pawn of the group muttered at that, getting nods of agreement. But he will not be an easy mountain for you and your peerage to climb. You must give it everything you have and beyond. Rias, Akino, Kaneko, Kiba Issei, and Asia all winced. That hadn't gone over well. I know, the young Gremory assured her sister-in-law. Although, I'm surprised you're giving me advice at all, considering how by the book you prefer to be. Offering Rias a smile, Grafia replied, I make exceptions at times when it comes to my family, and things like that show why I love her. Surzek sighed dreamily. Naruto looked at the leader of the underworld. It would be interesting to see how well Surzek got along with his father, in the blonde Uzumaki's opinion, but he had a feeling they'd get along great. The two shared a brief hug before the maid left the clubroom. Rias then turned to her peerage and declared, We'll start our training tonight. Gather a week's worth of clothes and necessities and meet back here in 3 hours. Yes, Bucho, the others replied while Naruto nodded. Naruto, Rias called, making him stop from leaving, I have something for you. The others left the clubroom while Naruto moved over to her. Pulling out his flash drive, she smiled at the surprised look he had on his face. I hope you don't mind if I listen to your demos, but you left this here the other day. I guess it probably fell out of your bag. Sorry? Rias said, feeling embarrassed all over again. He looked embarrassed at misplacing it, and at Rias admitting she listened to them. Shuffling his feet, he gave her an anxious expression and silently asked her opinion. Knowing what he was asking, she kept her smile and answered, Your demos were great, Naruto. I think that they're fine the way they are, especially the one titled The Journey. He rubbed the back of his head bashfully. His cheeks flushed once again in embarrassment. Keep up the progress, Naruto. I can't wait to listen to your CD when you finish it, especially with all the effort you've put into it. He gave her a grin in response and nodded, silently promising that he wouldn't stop working hard. Giving her a wave goodbye, he left her alone in the clubroom as he headed home to pack. With no one around, Rias scowled at nothing and declared aloud, Riser, you're going down. And that's the end of this chapter. Seraphol said. Chapter 4, Rehearsal for the main event. Of course, you can take time off, Tucci told his blonde employee, smiling warmly at the young man. You've put plenty of time here while going to school and working on your music. I don't see a problem giving you a break. Gah! Naruto gaped, his jaw dropping. I take it from your reaction that know him. Ophis asked. Naruto nodded. Yeah, even in my world, they've always been good to me. The dragoness nodded. It's always good to see an ever-constant like that in the sheer variety of events that compose the multiverse. Naruto had to nod in agreement with Ophis there. Thanks, Naruto signed to him. I should be gone for about 2 weeks. Siren Naruto's sign language is in brackets, Asia said, looking at the lines. Take some time to rest too, his coworker almost ordered him. Was always looking out for him ever since he started working for her and her father. Same, I swear she'd make a great older sister. Trust me, she's good at looking out for people that matter to her. Naruto chuckled fondly. Kushina beamed at that. The Gremory siblings, Isa, and the angels all smiled at that as well. You've looked pretty drained these past few days, so use this time off to relax. He smiled at her concern and nodded once. I will, he promised before he bid them goodbye. Heading back to the school, he adjusted the duffel bag that was hanging on his shoulder as he enjoyed the late afternoon breeze. During these 10 days, we'll be training you in using our weaponry, Zero informed him from the mental link he and the intoners shared. This'll be good. Wonder what tricks they're gonna show your siren self. Azazel said. I use all of them, but the others specialize in different weapons. What do they use? He asked back. I use chakrams, or bladed discus weapons, one answered. I use swords as my weapon, two continued. My scissors, three spoke up. But those can translate to daggers or knives for you. I use hand-to-hand, but I usually wear combat bracers, four stated. And I use spears, five finished. Not bad, mostly close-range weapons, but given how long ago they were sealed away, guess that's to be expected. Besides, if they can use air itself as a weapon, not a lot of good distance can do. Surzak said. Naruto gained a thoughtful expression at the variety of weapons he was supposed to train in. How am I going to carry those weapons into the raiding game? Kiba could lend me a sword with his sacred gear, and I could fight barehanded. But what about the others? Kiba nodded at that. True, his sword berth could easily be used to arm an ally. He understood the idea. And he was curious about Zero and Two's sword styles, if he were honest. Don't worry. By the time we're finished with you, you'll be a walking armory, Zero assured him, and he could practically feel the smirk she was giving him. For now, just listen to that girl and get better acquainted with your temporary peace. But I haven't felt any different since Rias put the peace into me. I don't feel stronger. I don't feel weaker in sunlight, and I even tried to read part of the Bible online the other day. Michael scowled. Hump online ba. Father's message is known as the good book for a reason. It's meant to be a book. Not again. He still goes on about stuff like that. Azazel moaned, face palming. Brother Gabriel frowned. As much of a traditionalist you are, it just makes it easier for people to gain their hands on the words of our Father. I understand why you're so passionate about that, but you're more or less trying to combat the flow of progress and time. And as long as more people can learn of our Father, His will, and His deeds along with those who followed Him, that's what really matters, doesn't it? Michael frowned, but sighed and begrudgingly nodded to his sister's words. The intoners looked to one another, all but one of them at a loss at what to do. However, Zero's smirk became a small grin at hearing everything he had said. Naruto, do me a favor and buy some empty vials. Huh? Everyone asked. Why was Zero making a request like that? Why? He asked in confusion. I've got an idea, was all she said in response, but it still made a shiver crawl up his spine. At that, Akino licked her lips. I just can't wait to see what Zero-senpai has in mind. The way she wants to make Riser suffer. Oh, anything she has in store for him is gonna be nasty. Everyone gave Akino disturbed looks. Okay, who else is worried about if Zero can somehow meet Akino's other face-to-face? Naruto muttered. Everyone shuddered. Okay, that was scary. To take her mind off it, Asia resumed reading. Rias sat calmly at her desk, waiting for the last member of her group to arrive. Naruto was running a little late, but she didn't see any harm in it. He lived pretty far from the school, and he couldn't access devil magic because of the restrictions on the probationary piece. That's an issue, Seraphol said. From what she and Naruto had recorded throughout his time possessing the piece, it seemed as though the brandings that Ajuka Beelzebub placed on it had the pawn act as nothing more than a title. In layman's terms, Naruto was only a devil in name, nothing more. Hello? Azazel said. Must take notes, important information on invention, Ajuka said tightly through gritted teeth, looking like he was about to have a mental meltdown. He couldn't summon his wings, couldn't access magic, didn't get a boost in physique, and wasn't affected by elements that naturally weaken newly made devils. Like sunlight. Hopefully, the Satan who created the piece would lower the restrictions if he decided to continue making probation pieces. They were meant to let others experience what being a devil entailed without immediate agreement. After all, must fix that, Ajuka muttered to himself. The other three Satans, seeing the inventor so deep into this, shared a snicker. Ajuka was a riot when he was this worked up, so no change whatsoever, huh? Might affect Naruto's other staying as Rias peerage member, I mean. If he's a devil in name only and the piece can only make it legal for him to take part in raiding games while he's still as vulnerable as a normal human going up against paranormal and supernatural beings, Irina said thoughtfully. Rias winced at that. The restrictions could make it seem like a busted deal, so Naruto's siren self would turn down being in her other's peerage? She was brought out of her musing by Naruto entering the clubroom with an apologetic expression. With a smile, she waved off his apologies and gestured for him to take a seat. When he took a spot next to Akino, who looked pleased by his actions, Akino smiled at Naruto, he gulped nervously and the queen giggled. Rias addressed her peerage. We'll be spending the next 10 days at one of my family's summer homes here in Japan. It's secluded enough so that we won't be disturbed by anyone who doesn't know of it. Good plan. Kushina nodded. Not that I don't doubt our chances, Issei spoke up nervously. But do we have enough members to take on a full peerage? Quality over quantity, Issei-kun, Kiba replied with a reassuring smile. We just need to focus on improving ourselves. Rias nodded. Numbers can overwhelm, true, but skill and ability are what win confrontations. Kiba is right, Issei, Rias continued. They may have more members, but I doubt they'll be expecting us to put up much of a fight, which gives us the advantage. Underestimation, Kaneko simplified for the perverted pawn. Issei hummed in thought before nodding. I think I get it. We get them to lower their guard, which lets us take care of them quickly. Holy hell, he's got his brain out of the gutter for 2 seconds. Naruto mock gasped. Hey! Issei snapped. I don't think about things like that all the time, only 99% out of 100. Kaneko said blandly, continuing to snuggle into Naruto's lap. I can't wait to see their shock when they realize their error in judgment, Akino mused wistfully, giggling in growing excitement. Oh, the looks of utter despair and agony as we… Anyways! Rias cut off loudly, preventing Akino from going into detail. Sometimes, her sadism got out of hand. Rias nodded with a groan. In contrast, Akino beamed. I'll have Kiba and Kaneko help you and Asia in your physical training, Issei. Then, Akino and I will help you both get a better understanding of devil magic. But what about Naruto-san? Asia asked in concern, seeing as that piece that's inside him makes it so he doesn't gain anything but a placeholder slot. That is a good question, Zenobia nodded. Naruto simply smiled and handed her his notepad. I'll be refining my wind power with Akino-senpai when she isn't helping you or Issei. There are also some things that I want to try out with my sacred gear. Oh boy, show us more of what nearly restarted a biblical war out of paranoia. Gabriel frowned. Ophis actually seemed pleased by the chance to see the intoners in action, even if that flower bothered her for some reason, and why did part of her feel like she wanted to eat? The intoners, Gale's Symphony sacred gear, and Naruto's parallel in the story? That reminds me, what's yours called? Issei asked. I have the boosted gear and Asia-chan has Twilight Healing, Gale Symphony. It's a wind and sound-based sacred gear. That's disturbingly fitting since you like music so much, he replied after reading Naruto's response. It's almost like your gear was made for you. He's not too far off, actually, one spoke up in Naruto's head, her voice sprinkled with slight amusement. Given how Naruto's other is part siren, how fitting that is can be pretty amusing. Seraphal said with a giggle. Alright, let's get going, Rias declared as she summoned a large magic circle that encompassed the entire floor. In a flash of red light, they all left Ko and arrived in a large parlor that looked ready to entertain several guests. Okay, the rooms are down the hall. Go ahead and pick one for yourself so you could drop off your things. Afterwards, wait for me back in here. Nodding their understanding, the members of the ORC left to pick their rooms for their 10-day stay. It was time to get to work. Okay, since you can't use our magic or wings, we need to figure out alternatives to help you during the raiding game, Rias said to Naruto as she paced in front of him. Currently, she had Akino teaching Asia basic magic while Kaneko and Kiba physically trained Issei. I have an idea that I'd like you to try. Lay it on me. Naruto spoke up. He tilted his head and waved for her to continue. I saw this in one of my manga, and it involved someone who also had wind-based power. What I want you to try and do is create a solid platform of wind that you could stand on in midair. This could help counter any of Riser's pieces who may try to get an aerial advantage over you. Naruto whistled. Impressed. I like it. He grinned. Not using wind chakra, son, not yet at least. Need to improve with your elemental affinity first. All you were able to have taught you was the basic chakra cutting method using wind nature. Kushina said. Naruto winced. That brought up memories of Asuma. Not a bad idea, actually, 5 mused. Nodding in understanding, Naruto took a breath to concentrate before he leaped as high as he could. At the peak of his jump, he thrust a hand downward and sent out a gust of wind that pushed him higher into the air with its recoil. His eyes slowly turned green as he put more focus into the hand releasing wind, picturing the air solidifying beneath him into a circular platform. Naruto nodded. How similar principle to making platforms using truth-seeker orbs. Interesting. Of course, solidifying wind was harder in and of itself, and then that was being stationary. How keep from losing focus while attacking or defending while likewise maintaining the platform would be much harder. Rias floated near him with her wings, ready to help him if this attempt failed. Her blue-green eyes looked beneath him, watching as the air shifted and swirled within an oval-shaped boundary. The winds within the boundary were trapped and held together as Naruto's feet approached them in his descent, and she readied herself to catch him just in case. Thanks for that. Both Uzumaki present told the younger, red-haired devil. No problem. Rias replied. Not at all surprised, either Naruto or Kushina didn't want to see what would happen if Siren Naruto didn't have a safety net, and this attempt went wrong. When his feet made contact, the platform held for a moment before Naruto lost concentration as he tried to keep his balance. With the platform destabilized, Rias flew over to him and caught him with his arm over her shoulders, earning her a thankful look from the blonde for the help. Few thanks again, Rias. Naruto smiled. Well, it's a start, she mused aloud as she landed them both safely. You made a good attempt, but next time try to make the platform lower so that you're not so high in the air. He gave her a nod in understanding. We'll keep working on that later. For now, I want to know what you plan to do to train your sacred gear. This'll be good. Kiba said. Pulling out his notepad, he wrote down his training plans before handing it to her. I wanted to try and shape wind into a close-ranged attack that bursts outwards when it hits someone. I also wanted to see what other shapes I can turn wind into. Naruto and Kushina both stiffened. That first attack it sounded just like. No way couldn't be, Naruto muttered. Good ideas, she complimented. For the first one, maybe have the shape fit into your hand, like a ball or something similar. For the other, you could maybe try to create a sword or something out of wind. That's what I was going to have you try so you could train in our weaponry, Zero spoke up. Good to see that she's on the same track as we are. Rias smiled at that. Thinking along the same track as a bunch of formerly living goddesses that wanted to rip Riser apart, that made her feel good. Akino crossed her arms and pouted. Lucky Rias. Getting praised by Zero-senpai like that. Naruto grinned at that, nodding both to Rias and to Zero. Not that Rias knew. She smiled back and held up her hand with the palm upwards. Within it, she generated a sphere of black energy that held a fierce red outline, easily keeping it stable in her palm. Looking the energy orb over, the Konoha natives present whistled. This is my power of destruction. It was hard for me to get a handle on at first, but now I can control it like this with ease. She watched him study it closely, holding up his own palm. Take in the air around you, she instructed, watching as it began to swirl towards his hand, and contain it within a ball shape so that it continuously twists and turns. This way, the power inside will keep growing stronger since it will act like a compacted hurricane. It is the Rasengan. Gotta be, Naruto said, shocked. His brows furrowed as he concentrated on the wind in his hand. Gritting his teeth, he put his left hand over the wind so that both of his hands cupped it into a crude sphere. Before their eyes, the wind created a thick shell that contained the churning air within. Looking ahead, Naruto took aim at a tree in front of him before he charged it, his left hand keeping the air churning within his right palm. This looks like it will certainly do damage, Roswisa praised, smirking at the whiskered blonde next to her. Naruto looked at her. You have no idea, he muttered. Within the Gale Symphony, the intoners watched as Naruto thrust the spiraling sphere of raging wind into the tree. As soon as it made contact, it began to grind away at the bark before it destabilized and burst against the tree. Due to it being wind under his current control, Naruto had been able to direct the impending burst so that there wasn't any backlash against his hand. And the result was the tree shattering under the pressure of the wind, which continued to travel forward as an enlarged sphere that barreled through many more trees before finally dispersing. Now that's impressive, Zenobia said, shocked. Zenobia, we might have to fight that, Irina gulped. The memory of how they had treated Asia was shameful, but in the story, it might end up being lethal, too. Two sets of eyes widened as they say the path of destruction that had just been made, amazed at the power behind it. You unreal, Rias gasped out. I only gave you the idea, but you took way beyond what I thought you would. Naruto didn't appear to hear her, holding his right hand before his eyes and clenching it a few times. To Rias, it looked like Naruto was barely coming to terms with what he was capable of. She was in the same boat, and it excited her beyond measure. If a simple suggestion led to that, then who knew what else Naruto had at his disposal? If I admit he scares me with that idea, will anyone hold it against me? Gasper gulped. With the intoners, they were all smiling or smirking with pride for their partner. That'll make some heads roll for sure, Five commented. Definitely. And to think he'll only improve from here on, For continued. And now my other's paranoia is starting to make so much more sense. Michael shuddered. 3 chuckled disturbingly. Think of what that will do to that bastard who insulted his family. Someone get me a camera. I want to get a picture of that. Rice wailed. I doubt we even need to think, 2 replied proudly. Nice job, Naruto-kun. I wonder if he could make that into a ranged attack as well, 1 mused. Yeah. Naruto smirked, knowing for a fact it could be made into a ranged attack. Head, just wait until you do your original self's Amino technique. Then, Azura Ophis reassured the whiskered blonde with a smirk. It will work wonders with that air sphere. Zero simply smirked in silence, not needing to say anything to show her pride in Naruto. Really liking those intoners, Kushina said, amused. 3 days had passed since the day Naruto successfully made that devastating wind attack. Out of curiosity, Rias asked him if he was going to name the technique, and a name came to him in a dream. In the dream, he saw himself and Jiraiya, the both of them dressed differently than he was used to. Jiraiya was teaching him the very technique he made, except it was made from an energy that he didn't hear the name of. However, he did hear that it was called the Rasengan. Naruto's jaw dropped. What? But that's me as my current self, so he decided to stick with that, liking how it sounded. The intoners also enjoyed seeing the wind technique, and they brought up one's notion of making it a ranged attack as, well, that was something Naruto was interested in trying, but he wasn't sure if he had the time to try it out, considering what he already had on his plate in terms of training. Everyone nodded at that. Too much to do, too little time, common problem. Everyone had to deal with that issue at one point or another. Currently, Naruto was standing unsteadily on a wind platform that he had successfully made thanks to Akino giving him some advice. She was more adept in magic than Rias, so her opinion was greatly valued on this endeavor. Akino gave Naruto a wink, enjoying the praise. Both of the rooks scowled at her for it. He was trying to move around while maintaining the platform, allowing him to take part in midair combat. Faster! Rias ordered as she had him practice dodging on his platform, sending weak fireballs at him with her magic. What? Kushina cried, then rounded on Rias, who gulped. Mom! Relax? I've fought Uchihas before. I can handle fireballs. Naruto yelped. His mother took a deep breath, let it out. She knew that was true still, didn't like it. She winced when she saw one get a bit too close, only being avoided by a wobbly shift in stance on Naruto's part. Still, she didn't let up, for he had asked her not to go too easy on him. Keep your focus, Naruto. Dodge. You really want to go all out for training, don't you, Naruto? Roswise smiled at him. Forgive me saying this, but while I can't speak for my other, the point of training is to make it so you can handle what happens in the field. It's supposed to be all or nothing for that very reason, am I right? The Silverette smiled at that. She agreed. She unleashed a trio of fireballs that he evaded. The first was dodged by him ducking under it, the second with a strafing shift of his platform, and the last by leaping over it with a near split of his legs before he landed on his platform once more, without falling through it like the times before. Quick development, Sirzex hummed. This was good news. He looked surprised at the success before grinning brightly. Standing up to his full height, he wiped the sweat from his brow and had his control over wind make the platform move around, as if it were gliding through the air. He stood calmly, not getting too emotional or overzealous as he willed the platform to move, ascend, and descend at slowly increasing speeds. Rias saw him executing this and smiled proudly, pleased to see that their training was bearing great fruit. Next, she would have him practice attacking and defending while maintaining his platform. That will be important. Kiba nodded. On the night of the 5th day, Naruto was seen in the parlor of the Gremory summer home. He was smiling contentedly as he cleaned off the dusty instruments that were on a stage. There were violins, basses, guitars, trumpets, drums, a piano, flutes, and various other instruments all placed together for the sole purpose of entertaining the audience. Currently, he was wiping some wood polish on a guitar before he would clean the strings and tune it. Asia paused in her reading, just seeing how happy Naruto's other self was right now with his, most likely, self-given task. It made her smile. I thought I'd find you here, he heard Rias speak up. He turned to her and offered her a smile and greeting before he gestured to the instruments he had already cleaned. Yes, I can see you've been busy, despite me telling you to rest. Is that a hobby or a habit then? Irina asked. He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly at her accusation before he finished cleaning the strings. Sitting with his legs crossed, he rested the guitar across his lap and began to tune it, frowning at how it hadn't been tuned in possibly months. Sirens are OCD about stuff like that when it comes to music, I guess. Azazel chuckled. Hey, Rias spoke up again, softer than before. When she had his attention again, she looked to the side awkwardly and asked, Can you play something for me? Woohoo! Want him to serenade you as it's just the two of you, huh? Seraphal teased. Rias was turning red at that. He blinked at the question, not having expected that. When she looked back to him, he pointed to the piano on stage, something she shook her head negatively to. No, play that, she answered, pointing to the guitar in his lap. I want to listen to you play something that's special to you. He looked to the guitar, holding it gentler than he had been beforehand. Raising his head to meet her gaze, he smiled faintly and nodded once before holding up a finger for her to give him a moment. She sat across from him and waited for him to finish his tuning and listened to him take a few practice strums before nodding in satisfaction. And so, he began to play, and Rias immediately saw him drown himself in the rhythm the guitar made. His eyes were closed serenely, and he swayed his head to the music that began to echo throughout the parlor. She felt the wind pick up around him at some point, moving around the instruments, and gently gliding across one of the violins to add a soft undertone that blended perfectly with the guitar. Clever, seems he has a bit of a closet romantic side, doing that. Gasper pointed out. Naruto paled as the females present all turned to him, looking amused. Her own eyes closed as she tried to immerse herself in the sounds and melody like he did so easily, but it was easier said than done. Her imagination started to draw up an image of a summer sky, with a gentle breeze that pushed clouds slowly. The clouds began to mix and phase through one another, starting off as shapeless masses of air and water before ending in random images that she enjoyed. She saw one shaped like an arrow, one shaped like a fox's head, and another shaped like a blooming flower. Wonder if those are just images or a type of foreshadowing for later in the story? Zenobia voiced. And just when she felt herself falling deeper into the spell of his music, he slowly ended the melody, finishing the song with a soft strum of the guitar strings. He smiled as he finished, his eyes still closed in peaceful content, a peace that his siren blood yearned for. Rias opened her eyes and watched as he just sat there, smiling softly before a stray tear fell down his cheek, dripping onto the guitar from the bottom of his chin. Concerned, she reached over and cupped the cheek that once held the tear, prompting Naruto to open his eyes and meet her gaze. She was taken aback by the warmth they held, and she felt her heart skip a few beats while her cheeks began to grow pink. He gave an awkward smile, scratching the cheek she wasn't touching before he made to grab his notebook. However, she stopped him by grabbing his hand with her free one. He met her gaze once more and saw her lean in close. This time, he was the one with flushed cheeks as she closed the remaining distance, and gently pressed her lips to his. Huh! Everyone cried, staring in utter shock, then they each developed their own reactions. Azazel laughed, get a kick out of the shocked faces of the two members of the reading group in question. Kushina frowned, annoyed at some hussy stealing her baby boy. Not that Rias was a hussy, but she was a mother whom hadn't given approval over the couple yet. Michael looked at the scene, finding himself unconsciously concerned about a human and devil in relationship when the human had goddesses sealed within him. As much as he trusted the devil's wanted peace, he still found the idea, and how powerful any offspring that came from the union would be, concerning. Gabriel and Irina, however, unaware of Michael's worries, found the scene to be sweet as they watched it. Irina sighed, wish I could have a moment like that, but I can't even feel attraction to others without risking becoming a fallen angel. Gabriel went sympathetically and pat the girl's back. That was something she felt likewise about that aspect of being an angel. 3 of the Satans were amused at the scene, while Sirzesh frowned. Oh, don't be such a stiff, Sirzesh-chan. At least he'd treat her better than Riser would, and it's only in the story anyway. Seraphal giggled. And if it were Sona instead? The male redhead offered in retort. That got the Leviathan to stop and think, before frowning thoughtfully. Well, as long as it was her own choice, he made her happy and treated her well, she muttered, considering things. She did not like the idea of competition for Sona's affections, but she disliked her sister being unhappy just as much. Issei hates. Issei hates. The breast-obsessed high school boy hissed, weeping pathetically as Asia tried to comfort him. It is a beautiful moment, Gasper confessed. Akino turned to her friend and King, grinning mischievously as the Gremmery's face turned red. Era, such a sweet moment between you and Naruto-kun. Bucho, tell me, do you wish you were in your other's place, or that someone that romantic was here to serenade you? Rias's face became as red as her hair at that. And neither. She stuttered out, which only made Akino giggle more before turning to Naruto. What about you, Foxy? Are you as romantic as your other, or do you wish you had someone like Bucho to kiss? He didn't answer, trying to ignore her teasing. Era, if you want, I could give you a kiss even better than Bucho. He sputtered at the offer while Kaneko and Rosweiss glared at the queen, and held Naruto tightly. He felt his body start to strain from the pressure, and, acting quickly, used the substitution jutsu to escape while Issei was in his place. Unfortunately, in his rush for freedom, he wound up in a more dangerous position. Oh, I just knew Foxy wanted his Akino-chan. The queen cooed as she hugged Naruto close to her. As Naruto tried pulling away, Akino pouted at him, then the ninja yelped as a sharp feeling he recognized lit up his nerves. Looking at the black-haired girl's hands as her arms remained wrapped around him, he wasn't surprised seeing electrical sparks fade from around her hands. He'd faced enough opponents with electrical abilities, after all. Issei became a sack of flesh and blood at the jealous rage-empowered grip the two rooks gave off, dropping to the floor, all but lifeless, while Asia panicked over his crushed body. So, do you want that kiss now? Akino offered, leaning in dangerously with her eyes closed, only to taste hair as Rosweiss put herself between them with her lips claiming Naruto's. The devil/fallen hybrid couldn't help her pout, but secretly, she was pleased that her plan worked. You owe me for that, Ross-chan. Kushina fumed at the Valkyrie kissing her son, but after a moment she forced herself to relax. She'd just need to have a chat with her later. Plus Naruto didn't seem to object the kiss, and there were definitely worse options than Rosweiss, like his old teammate, for example. When Rosweiss pulled away, she could have made a tomato envious of her redness, and she started to stutter out an apology. However, she stopped when Naruto gave her an easygoing smile, his own cheeks faintly red. No harm, no foul, he told her simply, shifting aside so that she could sit beside him again. She awkwardly accepted the seat, not knowing what else to do. With trepidation, she grazed his hand with hers and was rewarded by him gently grabbing it. She didn't dare look at him, hiding the overjoyed smile and red cheeks she had with her silver tresses. Odin-sama, if this is a dream, please don't wake me, please. Zenobia, who had been silent since Rias's other kissed Naruto's other, smirked at the moment between her ally and the blonde ninja. Called it, she whispered to herself. About other Rias and Siren Naruto? Kiba asked, getting a nod in reply. It was a simple peck, lasting less than a few seconds before she pulled back. She gave him a smile and said nothing, but there was something that was silently exchanged between their eyes. And slowly, he smiled back, feeling truly happy for the first time in many years. A few more days passed and Rias's group found themselves on the final day. Currently, the Gremory heiress was personally testing Issei and Asia on what they had learned. Akino was there to help judge while Kiba trained with Kaneko, her power and defense being a good opposition to his speed. The Occult Research Club members nodded. As for Naruto, he was practicing with a pair of bladed discs made entirely out of wind. He was tossing them one at a time before he spun in place and released them both, having them move in a rapid circle that started close to him before expanding outwards in diameter about 9 feet. Once they hit the 9-foot mark, they returned to him where he caught them with ease. Gas sirenese being drilled in shaped manipulation by the intoners. Naruto nodded. Those were one's weapons, after all. Spear! 5 called out, prompting Naruto to bring his wind chakrams close to him before he smashed them together and stretched his arms apart, reshaping the wind into a long handle with a drilling point on one end. Very versatile. Gabriel nodded. Twirling the new spear, He gave out wide swings of the tip and sent forth crescent slashes of air pressure that gouged into the trees that surrounded him. He then cocked the spear and charged a large rock before stabbing it, the wind being so sharp that it pierced through it and poked out from the other side. "Knives!" 3 ordered, and Naruto complied by ripping the spear at its center shaft and ripping it in two. The 2 pieces then shrunk and took the shape of curved daggers that he readjusted in his hands. In his right hand, it was held in a forward grip while the left hand held its dagger in a reverse grip. With a mix of slashes, thrusts, and kicks, Naruto attacked another tree with a razor fury before he backflipped away and threw the left dagger at it, piercing through it and stabbing tree behind it before it dispersed. "Sword!" 2 cried, and the dagger in Naruto's right hand elongated into a katana shape that he held with both hands. With practiced swings, he sliced through one tree and cut deeply into the rock he had speared before, the wind producing a horrible grinding sound as it sliced deeply into the rough surface. He then spun in place and took a rising slash against another tree, this one small enough for him to cleanly bisect as he flipped once more and landed back on his feet, stumbling briefly before quickly righting himself. "Bracers!" 4 yelled, and the sword dispersed in his hands before it regrouped around his forearms and shins. He took a few practice punches against nothing before he twisted in place and aimed a reverse punch at the rock he had damaged earlier. Putting all of his force into the punch, he rammed his wind-covered fist over the hole the spear had made before. The power behind it rammed against the rock and his arm sank into it up to his elbow before he expulsed the wind and shattered it completely, rubble flying all over where he was training. "Impressive display. See, those intoners are working your other self hard." Sirzex nodded. Stepping away, he took multiple deep breaths as a proudly tired smile etched itself onto his face. "Excellent work," Zero praised. "Now, it's time to practice our trump card against that prick." Rias looked excited at the prospect of a trump card to use on Riser. "Oh, this be good." Naruto frowned at the mention of the bastard who insulted his late family. Say what you want to about him, laugh at his disability, or even criticize his music, he didn't care. However, speaking poorly about his family, about those he had loved dearly and lost? Then there was no mercy for you, none. That's how it should be when defending even the memory of those you love. Seraphal said, frowning. For once, we agree. Gabriel nodded at the words of the devil who despised her most. With a firm nod, Naruto turned his attention to the lake that was near the summer home. Determination burned within his eyes as he headed towards it, ready to practice the technique that would take Riser down. Like the sound of that, Rias said. It was only a matter of time, now, and the intoners and he all knew that. Rias sighed as she deposited the Uzumaki onto his bed, using her enhanced strength to easily carry him from the lake back to the house and to his room. He was passed out from training himself to exhaustion, and yet he had a proud smile on his face, as he should, working himself that hard. Kushina nodded. She smiled softly at him as he rested, moving the covers over him to make him more comfortable. Turning around, she was about to leave the room before she stopped at the door. A compulsion flowed through her, and she looked over her shoulder back at his sleeping form. Rias paled at that while she noticed Kushina's hands starting to ball themselves into fists. Mentally deciding to screw everything else, she walked back over to his bed and pulled back the covers so that she could lay down beside him. Rias, my baby boy? Kushina said, turning to the female devil in question with an almost wooden, robotic jerk, her face going through spastic fits, her eyes closed, a too wide, too friendly smile on her face, veins bulging all along her head and her hair raising and swaying like a halo of flames, her face ghostly white by contrast. The heiress gulped deeply, wishing there was a hiding place. Preferably one that was angry mother-proofed. Calm down, Office told the Uzumaki woman, giving her a look. Kushina froze. Hagoromo had explicitly warned her that under no circumstances whatsoever was she to get on Office's bad side, and knowing how everything the old sage did was for a reason, she took that warning seriously. With that in mind, the woman forced herself to relax and nod to Asia to resume reading. Shifting herself so that she had her head resting on his chest, she smiled once more as she felt herself get comfortable. I guess my other can, Rias started to say, thinking about how she could never sleep unless she was completely naked, then thought better of voicing that in front of everyone. Kushina in particular, never mind. She was about to close her eyes to sleep before she blushed at seeing him pull her closer to him, still dead asleep and acting solely on instinct. She watched his peaceful expression and smiled yet again before gently pecking him beneath his chin and closing her eyes. Kushina grit her teeth at other Rias kissing the alternate of her son again. That night both of them slept better than they had in a long time, all worries, concerns, or doubts miles away from their thoughts. That's all for this chapter, Asia said. What if Naruto saves Rias from Riser Sasuke bashing? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.